the webinar on cyber violence and gender equality. And I welcome with all my heart the dignitaries who will be presenting their views today. I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor and Chief Patron of this webinar, Professor Sushma Yadav ji once again, who is the Chief Patron. I also welcome Professor Vinay Kapoor ji, who is the Chief Guest. She is the Vice Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar National Law University. Then Dr. C.B. Sharma ji, patron of this webinar, who is the guiding force behind this venture, will be speaking on understanding cyber violence, challenges and legal responses. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of organizing committee, the university and myself. Dr. Tamanna Delvi, who has joined us from Oman, will speak on gender equality and corporate governance. I welcome you, Dr. Tamanna. And Dr. Himani Maharshi will be joining us, has already joined us from Singapore. She'll be speaking on gender equality and inclusion at workplace. I welcome you, Dr. Himani. Dr. Parina G. Lawrence has joined us from USA. She'll be speaking on approaching gender equity through actors, issues, and practices. I welcome you, Dr. Parina, in this international webinar. I also welcome Dr. Ritu Bajaj, Registrar BPSMB, and Dr. Daisy, who are two of the advisors of this webinar. Then I would also like to welcome the members of the organizing committee who have worked so hard to put together this webinar. Engineer Swati Vashish, Secretary, CPS Cyber Security Services India, Dr. Rajesh Huda, Dr. Shalini Atri, Dr. Yogesh Chandar, and other members of the organizing committee, Dr. Suman Kohar, Dr. Kiran Lamba, Dr. Ashok Kumar, Dr. Anubala, and also the other members, the supporting members of the CBS Cyber Security Services, Engineer Sachin Sharma, Engineer Vishrant Ojha, Mr. Saten Singh, Engineer Bal Krishan, and most importantly, Kshitij Maharishi ji, because he's always there welcoming us and making this webinar sort of workable from day before, sharing with us the links and everything. Yesterday, Dr. Ankita had raised an issue that why does it happen that if there is no rule or law available, then people will do whatever they want? Don't they listen to their conscience? And then she said that it is only education which will give them a compass where to go, which is the right path to go and which is not, because everybody knows from inside that what is right and what is wrong. And always rules should not be the guiding factor or law should not be the guiding factor, but the conscience should be the guiding factor. So I think it was a very timely comment. And just now in India, we have the government has presented the new national education policy, whereby value-based education is going to be the hallmarks of this policy. And this is going to be a very important aspect of education which will be given to students right from the school. So I think that thing will be addressed. So I'm not an expert on cyber security or cyber violence, but yes, I have had my share of exposure to the issue of gender sensitivity and gender equality. And I feel, as has been stated by various speakers yesterday also, that when it comes to violence, generally women are more prone to it, women are more subjected to violence. And same is the case with cyber violence. When there is an issue of cyber violence, women are more subjected to cyber violence because perhaps they are vulnerable in so many ways, because it's ultimately a patriarchal society. And so that is why they become vulnerable and on the electronic space also. So I welcome all the speakers and the dignitaries and also the participants, very distinguished participants or attendees who have joined us for this international webinar. I would like to request the speakers when they talk about that, please throw some light on what could be the available mechanisms for the people to go to when they feel cyber violence. Although it is a very difficult question because here we are having an international webinar, and in every country the laws are different. One law, one thing which is a crime in one country may not be crime in another country, and there might be one law to deal with a particular type of situation, but in another country there won't be any law, and things become even more tricky because cyberspace is boundaryless. Cyberspace is just one big space without any boundaries, so things become very difficult, and many times perpetrators can go away scot-free. I would also like to urge the speakers to sort of talk about what steps can be taken by us educators, because we are educators, we are teachers, we are educational administrators. What steps can be taken by us educators to protect the young girls? And we are a women university, so as we said that girls are more prone to cyber violence. So what steps can we take to protect young girls from cyber violence? And how can we ensure gender equality in educational institution? So thank you so much for giving me the chance to welcome all the speakers, dignitaries, and participants. And I hope this today's proceedings are as good and as enlightening as yesterday's were. So thank you all. Over to you, Dr. Rajesh. You have to unmute, Dr. Rajesh. Please unmute.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the kind words and kind greetings. Before we move to the given schedule, I take this opportunity to extend our warm welcome and greet our special and distinguished guest, Professor C.L. Chaturvedi ji, Girdhari Lal Sharma ji, and Krishan A. Goyal ji. Very warm welcome, sir. Proceeding to the deliberation, I would invite Dr. C.B. Sharma ji. He is the patron and the chairperson of the international webinar. He is the Honorable Member, Security Council of India, and also the CEO of Dr. CBS Cyber Security Services LLP. He has served as bold and decorated IPS officer. His commitment and sincerity was acknowledged by our Honorable President, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam ji. He was also honored with very prestigious President Police Medal. He will deliberate on understanding cyber violence, challenges, and legal responses. I now very cordially request Dr. C.B. Sharma ji for sharing his views and experiences. Over to you, sir.
Om Sahana Vavtu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahavidyam Karvavahe, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vidvisavahe, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I pray to the Almighty God, may the knowledge shared in today's webinar be sharp and brilliant, and there be no animosity in both of us. You, the participants online in the webinar, and me, the speaker. I also pay homage to my mother, late Srimati Suadevi ji Maharshi, and my father, late Pandit Patri Prasad ji Maharshi, to bless us. Respected Chief Guest, Professor Dr. Vinay Kapoor ji Mehra, Chief Patron, Professor Sushma ji Yadav, all the learned speakers, dear academicians, researchers, other dignitaries, invitees, and little angels, Master Rudraksh Tiwari, Linaisha Maharshi, Trisha Maharshi, and Arya Tiwari, who are also online watching this webinar. A very good evening to all of you. In this session, we will understand the cyber violence, its challenges, and legal responses. Need not to define As we all know, cyber violence, which basically is the use of computer resource and internet to cause, to facilitate, to threaten violence against individuals that result in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, psychological, or economic harm or suffering, and may include the exploitation of the individual's circumstances, characteristics, and vulnerabilities. The panic of the cyber assault in the present time is so relentless that everyone is mentally afraid of this online, systematic, alarming global cybercrime. We all know the danger of cybercrime, but very few know how and when it starts and how to identify the cyber violence pertaining to specifically a women and girl child. We come to know about the cyber violence only when it occurs and the result is seen by the victim or experienced by the victim. The next challenge is, as our director in the initial deliberations questioned it, after identifying the cyber violence, under what law it should be dealt with. That is very important. And what should be reported, to whom should be reported, what actions or precautions should be taken that it is not repeated again. So the biggest challenge before the user of a computer resource is to know first what precautionary measures should be taken to prevent this cyber violence. Second, how to identify that someone is going to victimize by the cyber violence. Which law deals with this cyber violence? Whom to report? Again, the same question: what to report, how to report, the same thing. What precautions taken, and all that. First of all, we will take up how to identify that there is a attack of cyber violence. So it should be very clear in our mind that in the initial stage, the criminal will try to access unauthorized into the computer resource of the victim, including the internet. That is the first. He will start unauthorized access into the system. To access the system, one has to steal or break the security precautions given by the service provider. The cyber criminal steals or anyhow acquires or breaks the security credentials like password, username, mobile PIN, pattern lock, etc. Through the modus operandi he adopts is either through the social engineering or through the phishing, wishing, or cracking, or by programming such as keylogger, spyware, or other such programs. In the second stage, the cyber criminal, after getting unauthorized access into the system of the victim, tries to be friendly and gets personal information from the victim by concealing his own identity. That is the process he adopts. But it is systematic. The cyber violence is systematic. So when the cyber criminal interacts with the woman or girl child, the criminal behaves as a well-wisher and gets all the personal, physical, physiological, and psychological information of the victim. The victim remains unaware about the consequences. In some cases, the cyber criminal gets the personal ID from the victim's friends or victim's group and then accessing the computer resource of the victim and repeats the same thing. Now the victim, after disclosing his personal identity, is in the clutches of the cyber criminal. As we know, the cyber violence is more a gendered violence and is follows a pattern. So in the initial stage, because of the lack of the identification of the stage of happening of the cyber violence and also lack of knowledge of the gravity and relentless behavior of the cyber violence, the victim does not disclose any of his caretakers or guardians or family members and request the hacker only to give relief. Thus, the hacker demands more personal information in terms of some objectionable photos, videos, or assures the victim he will not demand any more. That the assurance given by the victim is then completely in the culture of the cyber. And now starts all sort of gendered cyber violence like cyber harassment, threatening, blackmailing, abuse, outing, doxing, frapping, trolling, trickery, framing, grooming, morphing, bullying, stalking, defamation, recording, and distributing of the sexual assaults, impersonation, pornography, etc. I shared a PPT with your screen. Are you able to see that?
Yes, sir, we can see that.
Yeah. So there is a list of some of the gendered cyber violence. It is very essential to know the terminology of cyber violence and abuse and modus operandi of the online violence to identify the act of initial stage. So if we share this PPT, you share this PPT, it is not static, but it is dynamic. It is not exhaustive. And the criminals operate with new modus operandi, identifying the vulnerabilities of the system. The development of the computer resource technology is the fastest fast. So the misuse of the computer technology is also fast. Now let us discuss one by one. The first is the cyber harassment. Everybody knows it's a it is the broadest form of cyber violence that involves a persistent and repeated act targeted at a specific person that is designed to and that causes severe emotional distress and often the fear of physical harm. Second is the cyber threatening. Cyber criminal expresses threat behavior to any person that he will be hurt or harmed. Third is the cyber blackmailing. Is an act of threatening any person to share their private information with public through the internet. Fourth is the cyber abuse. Is the behavior that uses technology to threaten, intimidate, harass, or humiliate any person with the internet to hurt them socially, psychologically, and even physically. Fifth is the cyber outing, doxing, refers to the act of openly revealing sensitive or personal information about any person without their consent for purposes of embracing and humiliating them. That's the part. Then is the cyber frapping. Cyber criminals use your child's social network accounts to post inappropriate content with their name. Then cyber trolling is very common. Cyber criminal will seek out to intensely upset any person by posting inflammatory, provoking comments online. And fake news, also known as junk news, pseudo news, or hoax news, is a form of news consisting of deliberate disinformation or hoaxes spread via online social media. Rumors. Rumor, a story or a piece of information that may or may not be true, but that people are talking about. Exclusion is the act of leaving someone out of deliberately. Then is the cyber flaming, an act of posting about the detective sending insults and profanity of their target. And the cyber trickery, similar to the outing, with an added element of depiction, the cyber criminal will befriend their target and trap them into a false sense of security. And cyber masquerading happens when a cyber criminal creates a fake profile or fake identity of any person online to pretend as another person to fool the victim. Cyber grooming, this is very important. It is very commonly happening. It is a severe type of the offense. An act often an adult befriend a child online and builds an emotional connection with him for future intentions of harassment, sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, or trafficking. The main goal of cyber grooming are to gain trust of the child to obtain intimate and personal data from the child. And the cyber dating abuse is defined as abuse, threats, or harassment that is digitally perpetrated within a relationship through social networking, dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Match, OkCupid, POF, etc. Messengers text messages, calls or emails. Cybermorphing is technique of changing or edit the pictures, videos, or animation that morphs the original content into fake form of information. This is the hacking, very common. Illegal intrusion in computer system, computer network, computer resources, or the computer database. Then cyberbullying, very common, is a form of cyber assessment harassment that is to be associated with victims who are children or teenagers. So cyberbullying, and if it's an adult, that is the cyber stalking. The cyber harassment to be associated with victims who are adults. Cyber impersonation is one of the several social engineering tools used to gain access to the system or network in order to commit fraud, industrial espionage, or identity theft. Then cyber defamation, a fake, wrongful, intentionally publication regarding any person either in the written or oral form or harms his reputation in a society. Then cyber pornography, an act of using cyberspace to create, display, distribute, import, or publish porn content on option material. And non-consensual sharing of image is a sharing the image of a person online without his or her consent. Then recording and distribution of sexual assaults, the recording and distribution of sexual contents of any person. Then internet related. Have chat rooms in which people from anywhere in the world can come together and chat with each other. These chat rooms are used by the cyber criminals to conduct the various cyber violence acts. Then identity theft is the deliberate use of someone else's identity like personal information and financial information. Then is the data modification, is the act of change and modify the data and information of the victim. Then the spyware is the type of software, it's a malware to spy the computer activities of the victim. Then keylogger is also a type of malware to get the logs of keyboard of the victim. Then the phishing and wishing. It reflects to criminal activity that attempts to fraudulently obtain sensitive information of the victim. If cyber criminal uses the phone to obtain the personal information of victim, then that act is known as wishing. The law pertaining to cyber violence with reference to Indian context. The most important thing which we are discussing since yesterday. So there is no cyber law how to deal it with. It is not known to the users. What is the law? So we will discuss the law pertaining to India because in the participants are more than 99% Indian, only 1% foreigners. So first we will deal with and discuss the law pertaining to Indian context. So what is the law applicable in the cyber issues or the cyber violence in India? So Mr. Sachin, you share the PPT. Please share
Yes, sir.
that.
Yes, sir.
So, the laws related to cyber violence in context to India is number one is the Indian IT Act 2000. This was enacted in the year 2000, and the purpose was there. The three purpose. One is to give legal recognition to the e-communication, and the second and third most important to mitigate and prevent cybercrime. So these are the three. So the Information Technology Act 2000, there are few important sections which deal with the cyber violence. One is section 43, section 65 to 77B, in which the offense pertaining to gendered cyber violence are. So the first section 43, there is a penalty For in section 43, they have declared the 10 acts as offense, and the 10 acts in the section 43. Yes, please, section 43, PPT of section 43. Okay, 43. So there are 10 acts, and the first is the access without the permission of the owner. Access, or one who secures access into the computer or computer system or computer network. Second is one who downloads or copies extracts. And third is one introduces or caused to be introduced any computer contaminant or the computer virus. Then fourth is the damage any computer resource or any computer program. Seventh is disrupts the computer system. Then next is the denies or causes the denial of access to a person who is authorized to access. And then next is the who provides assistance. Then third is the who charges the service availed by somebody else. Then next is the who destroys, deletes or alters. Then one who steals, conceals or destroys the computer source code used for that. That is section 53 in the IT Act. And section 60 under section 66, if any person dishonestly or fraudulently, these are the two ingredients, dishonestly or fraudulently does any act referred to in section 43, he shall be punished with the imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years or with fine. That is the punishment of. Then comes the section 65 and 60, section 65. And 65 says if anybody who damages the computer system, then the punishment is again 3 years imprisonment with fine. Then section 66C, that is the punishment for identity theft. We are discussing and taking only the those sections, relevant section which pertain to the cyber violence, and that to the gendered cyber violence. Then 66 is the punishment for identity theft. Whoever fraudulently or dishonestly make use of the electronic signature, password or any other unique identification feature, then the punishment is 3 years imprisonment and fine. 66E is very important. That is a punishment for violation of privacy. Whoever intentionally or knowingly captures, number one, he captures, publishes, or transmits the image of a private area of any person. You see, here it is the person, not the male or female. So it is applicable to both. Any person without his or her consent, under circumstances violating the privacy of that person, shall be punished with imprisonment which may extend to 3 years or with fine not exceeding 2 lakhs rupees. Then comes 67, very important person regarding the gender cyber violence. Punishment for publishing or transmitting obscene material in an electric form. So the section says whoever publishes, transmits in the electronic form any material which is obscene shall be punished on the first conviction with imprisonment of 3 years and the subsequent conviction of whether 5 years and enhanced penalty. Then 67A, that is punishment for publishing or transmitting. So whosoever publishes or transmits in the electronic form any material which contains sexually explicit act or conduct shall be punished on first conviction with imprisonment up to 5 years and 10 lakh rupees and subsequent 7 years and 10 lakh rupees. Third is the 67B, publishing or transmitting. Whoever publishes or transmits material in any electronic form which depicts children engaged in sexually explicit act or conduct So that is the difference between 67 and 67A and B. So, second, or creates text or digital images, collects, seeks, browses, downloads, advertises, promotes, exchanges, or distributes material in any electronic form depicting children in obscene or indecent or sexually explicit manner, etc. So this is a clear cut. Section 67, 67A and B, they are applicable to that. And anybody, in addition to that, anybody who facilitates the one who facilitates abusing children online, that is also in 67 B, then records in any electronic form on abuse or that others pertaining to sexually explicit act with children. So you see, so many ingredients are there in section 67B. So if you say there is no law dealing with this, it means we don't have we don't go through the IT Act. I can say that only. Then another act is the Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act 1986. So the Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act 86, Section 4 says, prohibition of publication or sending by post of books, pamphlets, or containing indecent representation of women, prohibition by post books containing no person shall produce or cause to produce, sell, let to hire, distribute, circulate or send by post any book, pamphlet, paper, or slide or film. Again, the electronic media. Writing, drawing, painting, photographs, representations, or figure which contains indecent representation of women in any form. So, provide the punishment for this and under the Indecent Representation of Women's Act, it is of 2 years with fine which may extend to 2,000 rupees. Then comes the Indian Penal Code. And the Penal Code, initially there was a section 354, but now the 354 is amended. 354 says that any assault or criminal force, if any person assaults or uses criminal force to any woman, intending to outrage or knowing it is likely to, he will thereby outrage her modesty, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description, which is may extend to 5 years, and fine. Now the new section added, the amended 354A, that is for the sexual harassment and punishment for sexual. Man committing any of the following acts, describe certain acts: physical contact and advances involving unwelcome and explicit sexual overtones, a demand or request for sexual favors, showing pornography against the will of the women. Here comes the cyber violence. Making sexually colored remarks shall be guilty of the offenses of sexual harassment. Any man, any person who commits the offense specified in above categories shall be punished with an imprisonment extend to 3 years or fine. Now the second addition is section 354B, that is the assault to use criminal force a woman with intent to destroy, and the imprisonment is 3 years, and which may extend to 7 years. Then 354C, voyeurism, that the imprisonment is 1 to 3 years. Anyone who watches, captures, or the image of a woman engaging in a private act in the circumstances, so the imprisonment is 1 to 3 years. So there is a relevant section to tackle such crime. Then next is the 354D. 354D is the stalking. We have just discussed the cyber stalking. Now it is the stalking 354D. Any man who follows a woman and contacts or attempts to contact such women to foster personal interaction repeatedly despite a clear indication of disinterested by such women, or monitors the use of a woman of the internet, email, or any other electronic communication, any form of electronic communication, commits such offense of stalking. So this is commonly happening, but since we do not know the relevant law, so we are in effect what to do and what to not to do. In 2 or 3 very famous universities, this type of thing happened with the teachers and the girl students. One commits the offense of stalking, he is punished. So it was pursued for the purpose of preventing and detecting crime, and the man accused of stalking had been entrusted with the responsibility of prevention detection by the state. So that is how the section 354D deals with. Now the next is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012. That is the very strict and stringent act, and the section 4 of the act is the punishment for penetrative sexual assault is not less than 20 years. The punishment is not less than 20 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life. So then section 6, that is the punishment for aggravated penetrative sexual assault. So if the punishment is not less than 20 years, which may extend to imprisonment for life. This may also. Then after section 8, that is punishment for sexual assault, not less than 3 years, which may extend to 5 years and fine. Whoever commits sexual assault and shall be punished with imprisonment with a description not less than 3 years. Then section 10, punishment for aggravated sexual assault, not less than 5 years, which may extend to 7 years. Then is the section 11, sexual harassment. So sexual harassment, what is sexual harassment? The person is said to commit the sexual harassment if such person with sexual intent utters any word or makes any sound or makes any gesture or exhibits any object or part of the body with the intention that such word or sound shall be heard, or such gesture or object or the part of the body shall be seen by the child, or makes a child exhibit his body or on any part of his body so as it is seen by such person or any other person, or shows any object to a child in any form or media for pornography purposes, or repeatedly or constantly follows or watches or contacts a child either directly or through electronic, digital, or any other means, or threatens to use in any form of media a real or fabricated depiction through electronic, film, or digital, or any other mode, or any part of the body of the child, or the involvement of the child in a sexual act, or entices a child for pornographic purposes or gives gratification thereafter. All these the ingredients enumerated in section are very exhaustive. Then the section 13, there is the punishment. So use of child for pornographic purposes. The punishment is not less than 10 years. In case the child is below 16 years, not less than 20 years. If the child is below 16, not less than 20 years. Whoever uses a child in the form of media, including program or advertising telecast by television channels or internet or in any other electronic form or printed form, whether or not such program or advertisement is intended for personal use or for the distribution for the purpose of sexual gratification, which includes number one, representation of the sexual organs of a child, uses of child engaged in the real simulated sexual acts, the incident, third is the incident or obscene representation of a child, shall be guilty of the offense of using a child for pornographic purposes. So that is also defined there. Then section 14 says the punishment for using child for pornographic purposes not less than 5 years and fine. Whoever uses the children for pornography purposes shall be punished with imprisonment for term which shall not be less than 5 years. So that is the punitive section. Then section 15, the punishment for storage of pornographic material involving child. So this section says any person who stores or possesses pornographic material in any form involving a child but fails to delete or destroy or report the same to the designated authority as may be prescribed with the intention to share or transmit child pornography shall be liable to fine not less than 5,000 rupees, and in the second on the second or subsequent offence the fine which shall be not less than 10,000 rupees. So that is the for even for storage of pornography. So that is there in the mentioned in this act also. So now the question is, we know the act, the cyber abuse or the cyber offense, and we know the under what law it is to be treated. Then comes to whom should we report? To whom should we report? Who is the competent authority to take cognizance? Where to report? To whom should we report? Who will take cognizance? So it is very clearly mentioned in the IT Act 2000 in section 78. Only police officer of and above the rank of inspector of police can take cognizance of the cyber offense. That is very, very clear. The prosecution can be done only by the police, and the investigation can be done by the police officer, not below the rank of inspector. And in the same act, under section 80, it authorizes the police officer that he can enter without warrant, enter and search into the premises without warrant to collect the evidence in this case. Now, where to report? If the cyber violence is committed by computer resources or mobile or web application, then what to do? Because in the web applications or the any other applications, social sites applications, some crime is committed and someone goes to the police station. By that time, that is viral. So damage has already been caused. So the very first thing is to block that circulation. And who will block that circulation? It's a technical, and that is the prerogative of the service provider. So in every application, there is a reporting section. Reporting section means if you feel there is some offensive thing placed on the service provider's blog or the platform, then you have to go to the reporting section and immediately report the whatever cyber violence it has occurred to the service provider. That is the very first thing. Then simultaneously, after reporting to the service provider, then report to the local area police station. Need not to search for the cyber police station, because nowadays the thing is very clear that every police station, if the cyber offense report is submitted to the station house officer of any police station, he has to take the cognizance. Then if he wants to send the cyber police station or he wants to take the help of the cyber station, it is in his domain. So the victim has to report to the local police station. If you have any difficulty, you face any difficulty reporting the police station, then you can contact to the senior police officer supervising the police station through email. The email address of all the senior police officers is available on the official website of the police department. And it is the right of every citizen to report the matter even to the highest authority, maybe DGP or the director of the highest authority. He may report to the highest authority, and you just, whatever you have reported at the police station, you kindly write to the or inform through the email enclosing your report that I had reported this matter at this police station at this time to this authority. Please do the legal action, needful legal action, and inform. He is liable to inform. So that is where to report. Now, in addition to this, you can also report to the cybercrime portal, National Cybercrime Portal. That is www cybercrime government of India. Mr. Sachin? Yeah. So you can see the portal. So that is the portal, Ministry of Home Affairs. So the portal is an initiative of Government of India to facilitate victims to report cybercrime complaints online. This portal caters all types of cybercrime complaints, including complaints pertaining to women or child-related crimes and other cybercrimes such as mobile crimes, online and social media crimes, online financial frauds, ransomware, hacking, cryptocurrency crime, and online cyber trafficking. Victim can also contact to helpline number. The number is 155260. It is available on the website. If you go on the website, the portal, this is available to you. Cybercrime, which works between 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. The web portal also has the contact details of state and union territory nodal officers and grievances officers contact details. Yes, please. Yeah. You can see on the screen, I have shared the details of the officers of different states and union territories. So, before closing the session, now, may I bring to your kind notice the question which was raised by the director in the opening session? May I bring to your kind notice that this webinar is an exceptionally webinar. Then, in this webinar, 60% of the participants are honorable women. That is the unique thing. I'm conducting the webinars, but such a good webinar I have never come across, where the 60% of the participants are honorable women. And again, 93% of the total registration are from teaching or research faculty from different university and colleges. This is a unique thing. So such a situation, may I request Honorable Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phul Singh Women University and Honorable Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Sonipet, all the academician speakers and the participants from various colleges and universities to be the pioneers in their own institutions in organizing cyber violence awareness webinars and seminars for the students. That is the only way out. May I also take the liberty to repeat my request to Honorable Professor Sushma Yadav Ma'am, Vice Chancellor of the first state university for women in North India, in whole of the North India. Gave a new vision of empowering women with online education to combat the menace of this cyber violence. So that is my request. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for very valuable and elaborated discussion. Indeed, you made the concept very clear and enriched all of us. So thank you once again for sharing with us the problems, practices, and the legal solutions.
I'm very sorry I took the second speaker's time. I'm extremely sorry. Extremely sorry.
It's all right,
I
sir.
may be pardoned for that.
We were really enjoying the discussion, sir. So I pardon to all the participants that I did not intervene.
The Honorable Director Ma'am, she is responsible for that.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing all the provisions which could be available for a person or victim of cyber violence. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
The legal know-how was much needed and expected by all the participants. So thank you so much. I am delighted to share with you that we have many stalwarts in participants. As organizers, it is a great honor for us, and thus we would like to acknowledge and introduce them to you. Very renowned analyst and guiding light for the academic world, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Central University of Haryana, Professor P.L. Chaturvedi ji is with us. Another very special guest, very bold and dynamic IPS officer, Shri Manoj Bhatt, who is a former DGP Rajasthan. You are welcome, sir. Among us, very renowned ophthalmologist of United Kingdom, Dr. S.K. Sharma ji from London is with us. I greet you, sir. Very decorated and bold IPS officer from Rajasthan, Shri Girdhari Lal Sharma ji. He is also with us. Sir, to all of you, I extend a very warm welcome. Welcome, sir. Our next delegate is Dr. Tamanna Dalwai from Oman. She is working in the higher education sector for the last 10 years. She is employed at Muscat College and adored various key positions there. Presently, she is Deputy Director of Quality Assurance. Also, she is Associate Fellow of the Higher Education Academy in United Kingdom. She has notable contribution in the field of academics as she has been associated with Scottish Qualification Authority and is the principal investigator for TRC approved project. It gives me immense pleasure inviting a very dynamic and vibrant person like her. Welcome you, ma'am. Please share your ideas and observations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajesh, for the introduction. It's my honor to be presenting today. And Dr. C.B. Sharma, thank you so much for your presentation. I will try to make sure that I do not eat into the next two speakers' time. So hopefully we should finish on time and the participants do not feel that it gets stretched. My discussion today is on gender equality and corporate governance. I'm just waiting for my screen to open. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Well, as Dr. Ibtisa Bansal had just in her summary talk in the beginning had said that gender equality should not always be viewed from just one gender, that it should not be just female oriented, because that's the direction usually most of the discussions usually tend to be. And I kind of agree with that completely. But based on certain facts, unfortunately, this goes into, or unfortunately, this goes into the same direction. That is, we still lack gender equality in the field of corporate governance. So, why do we need it? Well, as Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of United Nations, had once said, gender equality is critical to the development and peace of every nation. So that does not mean that we are being biased towards any particular gender. It's gender equality that we look for, and that's where we'll get the progressive nation. Based on this, my topic is very specifically on corporate governance. And one of the facts that I would like to present, as you can see on the slides, is how many women are basically composing in the board of directors of the top 1,000 national stock exchange companies in India. So if you see the statistics that are provided range for over 6 years. This is from 2014 to 2019. So the most latest figures that we have is about 8 months back. And this statistics, according to the statistics, the orange line represents how many companies out of the 1,000 have company with women directors. Well, you would see that in 2014, it was about 379 companies which were having women on board. Now, please note that Companies Act 2013 had mandated that every company should have at least one woman director in the board composition. Can you hear?
Yes, ma'am, your voice is audible.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so going back, yes. So Companies Act 2013 required one female director, and in line with that, the Securities Exchange Bureau of India, which is SEBI, made a regulation that all its listed companies should have at least one woman director in line with the Companies Act 2013. So as you can see that in 2014, in fact, only about 38% of the companies were having at least one woman on the board. Now let's look at what is a more current situation. Out of the 1,000, we have a phenomenal growth, which is about 977 companies which are having at least one woman director. In comparison to this, we also look at another statistics which is very crucial in corporate governance, that is independent directors. Now, why is this term important? Is because independent directors are those which are not having previous employment with the companies. They are coming from outside with a very different perspective. They are not related. So they are an independent body which cannot be influenced, so in that section, if you go to see the green bar, in 2014, we had about 19% only, which were having 19% of the companies having independent women directors. Whereas in 31st December, this has phenomenally grown to about 855 companies. Now, why has this happened? Is again in 2017, SEBI made it compulsory for the companies to make sure that at least one woman director, which is there on the board, is independent director. So they had to push this regulation to ensure that women independent directors are in place. Now, Professor Vora of IIM very recently published a paper on women on boards in India. And one of her findings was that only about 14% approximately was a women representation on a board of directors. So we're still low. But and what you see in the composition is that most of these women directors are actually women who are coming from family members. They are daughters of the same, of the company owners. They are family friends. So while this is a good thing for the next generation that is there, it's not so good for the corporate governance as such, because governance tends to fail when you are having family members on board. So proceeding with this, when you look at the companies overall, everybody cannot have women family members representing. So some of the companies have, of course, gone ahead and recruited outside women directors, but they have the statistics are showing that they have recruited women directors which are under the age of 30, not having parallel education as their male counterparts, who are actually more competitive. So the baseline that comes out from this is they just do it so that they can just tick the box. It's just compliance. They are not looking for the well-being of the company when they're doing it. It's just to make sure that we are making someone happy. Now, why do we need diverse boards? As Kerry Waring, the CEO of International Corporate Governance Network, has said, diverse boards are less prone to groupthink and more likely to embrace new approaches to meet future threats and opportunities. So there is a ground that is getting established in terms of why do we need diversity? Now, while we have spoken about India, there was a statistics that was taken for what is the percentage of women on the total board members in 2019 across the countries. Now, India stands 12th, which is good news. And we are having about 16% of women represented on the boards. And if you go to see, Brazil, China, Russia, Indonesia, Japan, and Korea are actually doing worse. But there are countries that are doing actually much better than us. If you have to look at France, Norway, Sweden, Germany, United Kingdom, all of these have more than 30% women representing on the board. Now that statistics means something, because European nations, you can see all of these are European nations, are actually going in the direction of having more women percentage. Now this was possible because towards 2017-18, they had a compulsory mandate that they should have at least 30% women representing on the board of directors. But there is a catch here. Okay, like we say, all right, I just give you an example that in India, we have companies which just recruit for ticking the box. Norway, there was an article in 2018. Now you can see Norway here has about 40%. Their mandate says that you should have 40% of women on the board of directors of all public sector companies. And they have done this beautifully, as the statistics shows. But if you see and compare this with the executive composition. Now, what do I mean by executive compensation? What we know as the C-suite, which comprises of the chief executive officers, chief operating officers, chief financial officers, and now there are a list of things like chief diversity and inclusion. There are a lot of officers that are coming under this. Only 7% of these public sector companies are women. So you can see that there is actually a paradox, because you're not actually promoting women to leadership positions per se to lead the company. And one of the reasons that they say is, yes, women are forming part of a group, but when it comes to taking major decisions, we need to have a more competitive person. So there is this whole conundrum of even developed countries or European countries which are providing these statistics, just probably doing a tick box check that says, yes, we have 30%, but are they really having that sort of valuable representation? Is it more meaningful for them? Now, for our participants who are here, who might not know, I went ahead and just went with the statistics first because I wanted to present a case of what's happening in corporate governance in terms of women on board. What is corporate governance? I would not want to go into the various definitions. I mean, on the slides which will be shared with you, there are about 4 definitions there, and there are many more. I would just put it very simply that corporate governance are structures and processes that ensure that the investment of the shareholders is protected and that they can guarantee a rate of return to the shareholders. So this is what corporate governance structures are and processes are ensuring. Corporate governance needs to have certain critical attributes. Now, this is very crucial to understand because you will come to know how gender falls into this. One of the most critical attribute is the commitment to corporate governance. Now, corporate governance has been in place since 1900s, okay? But it's very recently Let's say with the Enron scandal, followed by the global financial crisis. Prior to that, of course, the Asian financial crisis. What was a major gap that there was, when corporations had failed, they had crashed, investors lost money. What was a major factor that actually led or was not ensuring that shareholders had their money protected was this absence of proper corporate governance or strong corporate governance. So companies were not committed. They had corporate governance, they had a board of director, but the entire running of the show was done by the management team. And that's where you have the agency problem, because you don't have the transparency, the disclosures that are required, and you don't know what's happening to the funds. But corporate governance now over the years has strengthened so that that ensures that the major goal of any organization, shareholder wealth maximization, is in line, and that the investors' funds are not being manipulated or not being pushed into projects which are not giving them a decent rate of return. So firstly, companies have to have a good commitment to corporate governance. The structure and functioning of the board of directors is the second attribute. Now, why is this attribute very important? Is because if you go to any country and you see the code of corporate governance, which is mostly announced by the stock exchanges, expected from all listed companies to make sure that there is a compliance, annual reports are there having a section on corporate governance, and auditors are auditing that section. So auditors are even giving further validation. There is a section which very specifically says who can be the board of directors. And this is where I say that there are European countries who've mandated 30% should be all women. Whereas you have the concept of independent directors, where most of the countries have put in a mandate that says 1/3 of the board of directors should be independent directors. So as you see, the structure and functioning of the board of directors also need to have a specific compliance. The control environment and processes. Now this becomes a very crucial aspect, because you just don't want to have a board. It should be a functioning board. And that's the reason why the board of directors have a lot of subcommittees that go into ensuring the company operations are working in line. So you have a risk management committee, you have a nominations committee, you have an audit risk committee. All of these committees that are subcommittees of corporate governance are ensuring the control processes in their respective areas, and there are specific terms of reference of how many meetings they should have and how frequently they should be meeting. Corporate governance attribute, important one, very important one, that is transparency and disclosures. Now, as I said, corporate governance is part of annual reports, and the board of directors have to ensure that anything that gets on the financial statements needs to be accompanied by a disclosure to be made for any reader of the annual report to know what exactly that figure pertains to. So there has to be a complete transparency of how the funds have been utilized, and a proper disclosure in that terms has to be made. And a very crucial component, which is the rights of minority shareholders. So we might have shareholders who invest and invest more than 5% odd, who are usually termed as major shareholders, and they're also the ones who influence who should be on the board of directors. But who protects the minority shareholders who are just owning, probably a few handful of shares? So this is where corporate governance again comes into the picture. So having understood what corporate governance means, let's look at what Christine Langert says. She says, when women do better, economies do better. And this is something that we are all working towards when we are putting a mandate to make sure that you are having a quota and women are having a voice for the same. Now, there are certain studies that have taken place. There are quite a few studies, in fact. How does gender diversity translate for an organization? So you have a gender diversity on board of directors. Does it really bring any benefit? I mean, are we really trying to see any valuable output of it? Now, if you go and do any kind of research, you would see that there are numerous papers. Now, I have taken some very selected latest papers, probably the oldest that I've taken is 2017, that have measured how the gender diversity has affected the corporations for a specific, let's say, variable that they have studied, and this is across different regions. So this is kind of giving you a handful of studies to know how it's beneficial. Like, for example, Leo conducted a study taking a sample of S&P 1500 firms, and their findings concluded that when a board had greater gender diversity, they were less often sued for environmental infringements, which means, what does it say? It's actually making sure that companies were doing better compliance with the environmental regulations, and they did not have to be taken to court for that reason. Yaram and Yadapa, 2020, it's a paper already published, but will have an issue in 2021. It had selected the Standard & Poor's Australian Stock Exchange 300 index companies, and again, for them, what they found in their study, that the gender balance, improved gender balance, was helping companies to provide more positive corporate social responsibility activities. Nadim's study, again an Australian stock exchange, found a significant positive relationship between women's representation on the board and corporate sustainability practices. If we have to go into Atta Boyka's study of, which was on 21 emerging markets, so this is like even more diverse, not concentrated to one country, they found that gender diversity is positively associated with corporate innovation. So imagine, the more women you have on board, the better the corporate innovation of that particular company. Nguyen, who studied companies which were listed in Vietnam, the gender diverse boards were able to enable faster movement of leverage towards the target. So, capital structure is a very important component for any corporation, because it tends to bring out the benefits in terms of the tax shields. So they have to. So this study becomes crucial from a capital structure perspective, and again, gender diversity is playing a role here. Atif et al. Again, this is a paper which is an upcoming paper, which is a study on companies listed in USA. They found that gender diversity had a positive relationship with renewable energy consumption. So the higher the gender diversity, the better the renewable energy consumption. Similarly, if you look at Ye's paper, Ye and co-authors, they studied 22 countries, and this is again very interesting, because the board gender diversity is found to have corporate governance promoting higher dividend payouts. So you can see that there is a case that has been made out by extant literature that we are not just making sure that there has to be equality just for namesake. There is evidence that says gender diversity is helping you for corporate social disclosures, for dividend payouts, capital structure, corporate innovation. And if you see the last one, which is on FANG, that's actually to ensuring that it is helping them reduce, corporations are able to reduce corporate risk and zombie likelihood. So there is a very, very strong gender diversity case that needs to be promoted here. Ban Ki-moon, again a former Secretary General of United Nations, said achieving gender equality requires the engagement of women and men, girls and boys. It is everyone's responsibility. So it's not just the case wherein you have to have only the policy regulators in picture. It's a joint responsibility. Now, when I'm saying this, there is a joint report which was published by the Global Corporate Governance Network and the International Finance Corporation, which interviewed certain selected members of board of directors, male members, and they were from different countries, and they asked their views in terms of what they thought of diversity. A general view that came out, that emerged from those interviews, was they really saw that women on boards brought about a difference, because when you had women, men comported differently. They were more well behaved and the discussions were more in line. Women brought some kind of vibrancy, and they were also able to bring in a different dimension of a discussion which was not there previously. So as you remember, there was a quote which says that the group thinking stops when you have gender diversity, and this is exactly what they had to say. While many of the emerging country directors were kind of kind in terms of, yes, there should be promotion, a director from the developed countries was not in favor of having quota systems, because they said, you're wanting to get the job done, you should have talented board of directors. You should not be looking at gender. And they felt that women directors were a bit more submissive, and they were not very, not ready to take decisions, because they were kind of like the only one on the board. So it was kind of hindering their decision-making process. But however, it's a long way that they've come, because now developed countries, this was specifically from Europe, they are having a quota system. So you have more women, so you tend to have a bit more power. The general consensus was that women needed to get training and they needed to get more education. They had to, they needed to have, they need to be very selective of which boards they were representing. So they should not just accept any, you just get an invitation and let's become a board of directors. No, but because it affects their reputation as well. And they needed to also understand business models. So there is a gap, in terms of what women are expected to do. It's also noticeable that women actually did a lot of study before they attended a meeting. So this is, a tendency wherein women, in general would be well prepared. So this is what it goes to show that even male counterparts have noticed. Now, the numbers, why are the numbers being so low, especially in the developing countries, where we know the cultural and social elements are, an impediment to the gender diversity? And one of the 3 M's, or the 3 M's that affect, is marriage, maternity, and motherhood. And these are the 3 M's which usually affect women from dropping out from their jobs or taking a break. And by the time they are back, they are not actually parallel to the male counterparts who were, with them when they had joined. So you see that women fall behind, and then there is an excuse for the companies to say, we don't have enough women who are trained to be part of the board of directors. But in fact, there are quite a few incentives that are available. Developed countries, on the other hand, of course, have given quota systems, but on the other hand, they also provide, incentives in their organizations, such as creche system, babysitting, providing them a way by which you can do flexible work hours, work from home. Now, all these are factors wherein you are still, giving the flexibility, but also ensuring that the women are kept up to date. That Ernst & Young provided a list of things of how we could improve gender diversity on boards, because the findings are mixed. Women are still underrepresented in many of the countries, and they still are not making to the board of directors. Some of the things that can encourage is mandatory disclosure. So companies should be disclosing what percentage of women are part of the board composition. Measurable targets. So as I said, we need, like, you have a mandate, or India has, that there should be at least 1 women director. So these are measurable targets, and that's where companies are working towards. Board refreshments. Now, this becomes very critical, because, sometimes you have a board of directors who are years and years just sitting on the same board. Well, no, there has to be a limited period of how many years you can serve on the board. And that's the reason why the tenure of the board in most of the countries is restricted to 6 years, with a 3-year first-year term and a second renewal, which is again a 3-year. And after that, you have to bring in fresh minds. So what happens is this kind of encourages fresh flow of ideas and, a better protection to the shareholders. Nomination committee, which is a subcommittee of the board of directors, it's very crucial that because they are the ones who formulate the regulations for who gets nominated on the board of directors. So this is a critical element, that they need to formulate regulations to ensure that they are getting the right talent on board, and they have some professional development activities on board. Of course, investor engagement and investor voting is very crucial to ensure that we are having the gender diversity on board. And let's give these corporations which have got good representation a positive recognition, and those that don't get a negative recognition. This kind of, pushes the corporations to think more towards let's get the gender equality onto the board of directors. So as Gloria Steinman said, a gender equal society would be one where the word gender does not exist, and where everyone can be themselves. And, to be very honest, I myself, I come from a family where my parents did not distinguish between me and my brothers, and I had the freedom of decision making. So when I say the word gender, I said, why are we even still talking about it? But because there are countries where women are still not getting those rights, and they're not getting the same sort of independence, same sort of growth, same sort of choice. So in line with this, one of the interesting study that I would like to share here is the one annually conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers. They circulate annual corporate directors survey, and a latest survey of 2019, which was circulated to the directors in S&P directors. So this is based in US. When it was asked, what do you think, how important is gender diversity? Imagine in 2018, it was 46%. But in 2019, the importance has just dropped to 38% because that does not hold much importance to them anymore. If we have to look at those directors that have said no to diversity, in fact, in that, there are about 50% or 54% of the female directors who themselves have said, no, we don't want diversity. So you can see that developed countries where probably, the development or the gender index is much favorable and they are leading there, they might not be finding that this gender talk is holding that importance. Why do we need to even talk about it? But this is the state that we are in. So this is some facts for that also need to be the other side that we need to know. To end it all, no country can truly develop if half its population is left behind. So when it's a very open statement, and probably the person who said it might have meant it was meant for the women, but I would probably say that this means for both the genders. As of right now, the facts are stated, it's more towards the women that is required, that we need to pull them up, and there need to be a bit more initiative in pushing them and making sure that they are having a good representation in corporate governance. I would like to thank you all for listening to me, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for very wonderful and detailed discussion. We really feel informed about the share of the women in companies and the respective obligations to ensure gender equality. Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker, definitely a value addition to the ongoing discussion, is a distinguished alumni of XLRI Jamshedpur, architect Himani Maharishi. She is a renowned human resource leader in Singapore. With more than 12 years of experience in providing business solutions at one of the largest FMCG companies in the world, architect Himani very candidly agreed to share her experiences and views with us. I welcome you, ma'am, and invite you to take the discussion to the next level. Over to architect Himani Maharishi, please.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. Ma'am, am I audible?
Ma'am, you are audible.
All right, great. So it's an honor to be speaking with all of you today, and I thank Dr. CBS Cyber Security Services LLP and Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya Sonipat for inviting me to this esteemed webinar. My name is Himani Maharishi, and I'm currently a Senior Director in Human Resources at Procter & Gamble, Singapore. Over the next few minutes, I'll talk about a topic very, very close to my heart, equality and inclusion. And given that we have only 15 minutes for this discussion, I'll focus my attention specifically on gender and at workplace. What you see up there, just 1 minute. Yeah, so what you see up there is a brief introduction about myself. I do not claim to be an E&I expert, but over the last many years of my work experience in human resources, I have been working extensively in the domain of equality and inclusion. I have led E&I transformations for multiple business units. I have coached CEOs and CXOs in their E&I success journeys, and I've also mentored many young women professionals. But more importantly, I'm blessed to be a humble example of how women can have it all if they get the right motivation and support. So while I'm building a no constraints career, I'm also bringing up two lovely children. You can see their pictures up there. I'm managing a dual career. My husband is in a government job as well, and I also have time for my hobbies. So in the upcoming slides, I will share with you my personal insights and learnings. I also want to highlight that I'm not representing a specific institution or company here, but I'm talking to you in my individual capacity as a working woman and mother. In the discussion today, we will start with understanding more about what do we mean by equality and inclusion? Why is it critical and how can organizations step up their results? There is a Q&A session towards the end of today, and I'll be around to answer any questions that you have. Please feel free to use the Teams chat feature to send in your questions as they come to your mind. There are three concepts I want to bring your attention to: diversity, equality, and inclusion, which go hand in hand. Diversity can be described as the difference that makes people unique. And when you are different, you have different needs. And equality means giving everyone equal opportunities in line with their needs. But simply acknowledging others' uniqueness and giving them equal opportunities is not enough. We need to focus on end-to-end inclusion, which means creating an environment where everyone can bring their unique self to work and perform at their peak. So if you look at it, simply put, diversity is having a seat at the table. Diversity is having all the right puzzle pieces in place, but inclusion is having a voice. Inclusion is having that voice be heard so that the jigsaw puzzle is perfectly solved. In my experience, organizations focus a lot on diversity, and you will hear a lot of talk about that. That is getting in the numbers. But unfortunately, they focus equally less on inclusion. And hence, it all remains just diversity numbers without any significant impact on the organization's results. Now, talking of results, have you ever wondered why is E&I a critical priority for organizations these days? McKinsey did an analysis a few years back and compared the top successful companies with the bottom performing ones. And what they found was very interesting. They found that the successful ones had much better gender diversity in their executive teams. So why do you think diverse teams achieve better results? Another research proves that the more diverse a team, the better are their decisions. And you can see it up there, wow, 87% of the times. And another vector I want to draw your attention to is innovation. Innovation is the one key to building businesses that last. You look at all the Fortune 500 companies that have been there for a century or more, you will see innovation is the cornerstone of their success. BCG research shows that companies with better diversity scores would deliver higher innovation. So diversity definitely makes better sense. But now when women step out of their homes and they are working in offices, let's see what's happening on the home front. And I can think of multiple positives of diversity at workplace in the home front as well. There is dual income, and that's a no-brainer, right? There is dual income so that the family's financial stability improves considerably. And because there is less time now for women to do household chores, innovations happen on that front too. Household processes become simplified, they are structured, clutter-free, faster, whatnot. The other thing also is that we also have mothers who are more informed. Now, this is a controversial topic, and I don't mean to say that homemakers are not educated. What I mean is that when you work outside, you become worldly.
Himani ma'am, you're not audible. Himani ma'am, you're not audible.
May I request Modi sir?
to track her availability, or is there any technical
Himani
issue?
ma'am, can you?
Yes, hi. Can you guys hear me, please?
Yes, now we can hear you. Now
Okay,
we can hear you.
so Kshitij sir, where did I leave? You know, because I just kept talking, so I didn't realize when did I log out.
I mean, in the last half a minute, you were out.
All right. Okay.
Because
So let me just start talking about, and maybe I'm going to go a bit faster now. So can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to move faster on this one. So I was just talking about, the household benefits of, having diversity. And the simple one that we were talking more about.
More educated, informed mothers that you were talking.
All right, great. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, and when I say more educated and informed mothers, I don't mean to say that homemakers are not educated. You know, what I mean is that when you work outside, you become worldly wise. And also, if there is a trend of working women, parents would educate their daughters too, as much as they educate their sons. And the overall percentage of educated women would increase in the society. And last one is my favorite benefit. I think children become far more independent where their mother is a working mother and stepping outside of home. I can see it in my own personal life. My son Rudraksh, who's 8 years old, I believe is 10 times more independent than what I was at his age. And I know he's in this webinar, and I just want to tell him that I'm super proud of how he is helping and enabling me do my work better. So diversity definitely makes social sense. Now, I have a chart up there which just talks about, women percentage, women in management, across various countries. We've talked already on this in detail in Dr. Tamanna's, discussion. So I will not, focus a lot on that. But I just want to say that, this is a chart that shocks me a lot and it pains me a lot. We just have about 10% women in management in India, and it's nowhere close to the 50-50 equality we desire. So let's talk about what's stopping us from achieving 50% men and 50% women representation. The first one, Mr. Anand Mahindra had tweeted this a few months back, and I'm sure it must have reached you via some or the other WhatsApp forward. The reality is that we are in a transition from women at home to women at work. But what women used to do at home is still being expected from them. Leave aside from anyone else. In fact, women expect this from themselves. I'm sure all of you working women on the call, how many times have you felt guilty for not being the one cooking or washing or cleaning? I'm sure most of the times, right? The guilt factor stays. The other challenge is biases. And the most dangerous of them is the hidden or unconscious bias. Women cannot do math, or women cannot do a certain kind of job, or women cannot have it all, or women cannot be results oriented, or women cannot have leadership skills, blah, blah, blah. These are all the examples of biases women deal with day in or day out. And hence they do not get the opportunities coming their way. I also feel that because we do not have enough women at workplace yet, the ecosystem is not developed for women's needs or women's motivation. The golden number here is 33% in my mind. The moment we have more than 1/3 women at workplace, we will see an amazing transformation in our workplaces as far as gender equality is concerned. Last but not the least, and this is heart-wrenching really, crimes against women are still very high, which is stopping our women to come to work. Until and unless we as a society step up on this, 50% women representation will really be an unfulfilled dream. But thankfully, we now have organizations, and many organizations, who understand the benefits and challenges of diversity, and they are committed to make a difference. What you see up on the slide are top 4 winning strategies, which in my experience, I have seen giving amazing results to the organizations. So let me take you through them in detail. The first one, leadership sponsorship, that's what I call as the make or break strategy. If the leaders are personally committed to gender equality, the results will for sure come. I want to share a personal example here. A few years back, I was involved in startup of a greenfield factory in Hyderabad. As you all know, factories have 24/7 operations, including night shifts. And for us to have a gender equal and inclusive workplace, it was critical for us to have women working in the night shifts as well. But unfortunately, the government regulations did not permit women working after 7 p.m. We reached out to the government, we gave them confidence via really intentional focused plans that we can provide 100% safety and security to our women. And we got that exceptional approval. And we had very specific efforts towards making it work for our women in the plants. And as we talk today, that factory has 40% women. It's on track to be 50% women soon. And it is amongst our highest performing units. And all of this was possible only because the factory GM believed in diversity. He envisioned a gender equal workplace and he thought out of the box to make it happen. So I really feel, the role of leadership is actually make or break in our gender equality efforts. Let's talk about recruitment, which in my mind is the most prominent challenge that organizations face, hiring talented women. And it is a prominent challenge because most of these talented women are not even there where we are traditionally hiring from. So organizations must challenge their inherent biases and they must look at alternate sources of talent availability. Gone should be the days where you're hiring only engineers or only MBAs, and there should be a much higher focus on job-based learning. But then even if you find those women, will they join you? That's the question. Will their families let them join you? Because we've seen all those challenges, happening which stop women from, being at workplace. And I have a personal experience here, which had shaken my inherent biases early on. Many years back, we were working on a recruitment drive in Japan, and one of the candidates reached out to us very shyly. Her grandmother was not comfortable with her joining an office, and hence she wanted to drop out. We invited the grandmother to our offices. We took her through our infrastructure and policies. And guess what? She felt very comfortable with our culture and environment. And finally, she let her granddaughter continue with us. Now, many years later, that same granddaughter is a director in the company and she's doing exceptionally well. So if we had stuck to the standard MNC corporate norms of we will only talk to the employee and not to their families, we would have lost a talented woman leader. The trick here is we need to think out of the box to make gender equality happen. Let us talk about the third strategy, talent development. Most organizations have higher women representation at junior levels and lesser at higher levels. The simple reason is that the women talent drop out along the way because they do not get the right enablers to grow their careers. Ironically, most of our career systems are tuned to men's needs and men's life stages because men are the ones who have been at the workplaces forever. But then women's needs and life stages are different. Isn't it a woman who gets pregnant and gives birth to babies? Isn't it a woman who still is in a transition phase between being at home and being at work? And isn't it a woman who is more vulnerable to societal crimes? So the need of the hour is having more and more customized career paths and way of working and challenging the stereotypes. In my previous assignment, we challenged all role stereotypes and why they need to be done from a particular location. And we converted 25% of our location fixated roles to location free roles. Look at what COVID-19 has shown us. Almost all our roles can be location agnostic, thereby making it so much easier for employees to manage dual careers, to manage aging parents, to manage growing children. Another aspect here is a standard bias that women face. You cannot do a certain type of role. And in one of my previous assignments, I was heading sales organization for our Indian subcontinent business. Now, sales is traditionally primarily always a man's job. But we challenged that bias and we staffed 50% of our sales leadership team with talented women. And the team delivered exceptional business results. Now, how did we do that? There is no secret sauce here. We just decided to staff the roles only based on merit and nothing else. Let's talk about the fourth strategy. And this one is my favorite intervention. Peter Drucker had aptly said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you haven't intentionally built a culture where women employees are valued, where women employees are respected, where women employees are included, everything else will fail. To many people, culture is either like a mirage and a black box or very inspirational statement that have no action. But in reality, culture is neither of those. Culture is behaviors, and behaviors get driven by organization design, structure, and policies. For example, you reward someone for cost sharing, and they will slowly start demonstrating a frugal behavior. Organizations should intentionally focus on a culture of equality and inclusion, not just in their statements, which they keep posting everywhere, but also in basic structural work to make it happen. The other important aspect here is affinity groups and support networks. This also goes back to my point of having a critical mass of women at workplace. When you see others like you feel more inspired, you feel more confident that it is going to work. I also want to call your attention to the role of men here. And I know we've been talking today as well. Throughout my discussion so far, I have been talking about women, women, and women. And sometimes it makes the men very nervous. They do the math and think, hey, there are only 100 jobs and we have 80 of them. And if women take more than their current 20, 30 of us will lose our jobs. And oh my God, maybe I will be the one in those 30 losing their jobs. And hence, it is very important for men to be included in gender equality conversations and for them to be told that it is not about redividing the pie, but increasing the size of the pie. Finally, organizations should also relook at the policies and infrastructure and if they are meeting the needs of their women employees. I've personally dealt with gaps as basic as separate toilets in remote offices to strategic second careers programs. To recap, it made sense to focus on equality and inclusion. It will help in the world's economic and social development. There are certain barriers that exist and we need to join hands and get together in breaking those barriers. Finally, a holistic, intentional strategy is the need of the hour, spearheaded by the leaders of the organizations. I want to leave you with this thought. Believe you me, every successful woman I know has a village cheering her up. For example, in my case, my father and my husband have always encouraged, always supported, and always trusted me. And that's why I could dare to dream. They are the ones who have made it happen for me, not myself. Like them, each one of us here on this call plays a critical role in at least one woman's life. For example, my daughter Aryahi, she's 5 years old, and my husband and I are doing our bit to make it an equal world for her. So a couple of years back on a Saturday morning, she took out a worksheet, sat at my work desk and declared to all of us, do not disturb me, I'm working from home. And that's a picture you see up there. So if you're not already doing that, start your journey now of making it an equal opportunity world for the women in your lives. All of us will benefit from your efforts. Thank you very much. It was really my honor speaking to you.
Thank you, ma'am. You have very rightly said that the gender equality can be a reality if we are able to ensure better place and share to women at workplace. The discussion was very, very useful, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful discussion. Moving further, I would like to introduce our next speaker and delegate, Dr. Parina G. Lawrence. She is from United States of America and brings to us 25 years exemplary teaching experience and knowledge. Dr. Lawrence is currently a senior fellow at Yale University in New Haven, Coastal City, Connecticut, in the Office of International Affairs. She has vast research experience in gender and family-related studies. She is recipient of a number of awards throughout her career. She has authored a number of books, chapters, articles, and reports. I welcome you, ma'am, and request you to share ideas with us. Now, Dr. Lawrence, please.
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
You are audible.
Thank you, dear friends and colleagues. It truly is a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you today. And I want to extend a special thank you to our organizers, our sponsors, for inviting me and such a distinguished panel. I've learned so much from you. So instead of doing a research presentation of the work that I'm doing, which is what my former plan was I decided once I knew I was going to be one of the last of our invited speakers, and then I would be followed by the honorees speaking, that I would do more of a recap and sort of set this up as a framework and propose to you a framework through which we can study gender equality. I thought that might be more helpful. So I want to summarize quickly what we have learned over the last 2 days. So we have heard from several scholars who shared their expertise on the issue of cyber violence and gender equality. Dr. Ankita Sharma talked about the rise of digital vigilantism and misogynistic self-righteous indignation, all leading to more women being harassed in cyberspace. Dr. Dina El-Mahdi shared statistics about global cyber violence and highlighted solutions such as education that can potentially change this mindset. And the education has been brought up by several of our other speakers as one of the solutions to how do we overcome our challenges. Other solutions were also stressed, such as holding individuals, in particular the perpetrators, as well as the platforms also accountable. So holding Twitter, Facebook, and whatever else, the mediums itself perhaps accountable. Dr. Dheeraj Goya shared statistics and individual stories of victims of cyber violence and focused on this violence's psychological impact on the victims in particular. This morning began with Dr. C.B. Sharma, who gave us details on the types of cyber violence and harassment and the laws that punish such behavior, particularly Section 66 and 67, which was very heartening and important information for us to know. What I would urge all of us is it's good to have laws. It's really important that they are practiced and implemented, and all of us are equally responsible in ensuring that that happens. Dr. Tamanna Dalway talked about gender equality in corporate governance. She stressed the benefits of what that does, how that improves society as well as adds to profitability, highlighted the gaps, and talked a little bit about the quality of the gaps and how women often get co-opted. So, and what I mean by that, and my research has shown that even though you may have fabulous laws on the book, often the system wins. And how is it then that we make sure that the system does not win, that we actually help to change the social order? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then Himani Maharshi, loved your presentation, talked about building a diverse, equal, and inclusive workplace culture and how the change begins from the top and filters down, bringing about culture change. And I loved the last thing that you said, which is change begins at home. And if there's one message I'd like to send us, it's that we practice change at home and then bring change to the organizations we work for. So today, I'm going to see if I can share my slides. It doesn't seem to be working. So Kshitij, can you see if my slides can be shared? Perfect. Okay. And I'll tell you next when Can everybody see it?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay, perfect. So I'll say, when I say next, just move the slide, please. So right now, this is good. So today in my talk, I'm going to go broader and talk about one approach that I have created and have used in my research. It's a framework that identifies the actors, the issues, and the practices, and how they intersect, interact, their relationship to each other, and how they influence one another. It's one way to develop a broader understanding of the problem with all its complexities, and then we can seek to find solutions. The issue at hand today is cyber harassment and violence against women. We will revert to it in the latter half of my talk, and I will demonstrate how we can use this broad framework in that context, especially as we think about solutions. So I'm an economist who studies development economic issues through the lens of gender. So that's where I'm going to begin. If we look at gender and development globally, significant progress has been made in the inclusion of gender issues in international development and at development agencies. And many of our presenters have shared statistics with you about gaps, and all of you are familiar with the education gap, the labor force participation gap, and the progress that's been made. So life expectancy has gone up, women's health has improved. So enormous gains have been made. However, we also know that their persistent problems continue. Domestic violence continues. Labor force participation rates in many of the countries have started to stagnate. And in fact, we don't know what the impact of COVID might be, particularly in Western countries, where we are afraid that the labor force participation rate of women might start to decline. We all know that the burden of how domestic work, no matter with all the technological advances, falls on women. And now we see new challenges and problems emerging: cyber violence, workplace harassment, particularly as women enter industries that aren't typically known to be women-friendly or didn't have a significant percentage of women in them. There, the harassment seems to be at a much higher percentage. So to better understand where we have been and where we are headed, I'll start by sharing with you a brief overview of the field as to how we as economists, social scientists, and development professionals have approached and are approaching issues related to women's equality to better understand how can we navigate these issues as we go forward. The literature here is continuously evolving. We adapt, we modify as we learn more. So beginning, and you're already at that slide, in the 1970s, Esther Boserup was one of the first scholars to widely observe and note that gains to economic development were not shared across the population. It was deemed that attention to women needed to be paid while drafting policies and their unintended implications. This started the Women in Development movement. This group was active in creating policies geared towards fixing problems, whether it was about access to training, access to education, access to credit, property, and livelihoods for women. I was an active member of this movement as a graduate student. However, while we were addressing important concerns, we did not quite address the underlying problems. We never questioned, why did these problems exist in the first place? We were treating the symptoms with our policy recommendations, which, let me tell you, was very important. We had to treat those symptoms, but we were not truly addressing the underlying health conditions. At the same time, other schools of thought were developing that further helped us understand some of the problems and constraints. But these other development models also had their drawbacks. Next slide. The current prevailing school of thought is the broader gender and development focused approach. This group built on its predecessors and other schools of thought and includes the social, political, and economic realities faced by the residents of the developing world. There was a shift from talking about women to talking about gender and becoming more inclusive, and towards understanding the hierarchy and the prevailing social structures and its impact. So now we started paying attention to social class and class differences. In the Indian context, the caste differences. Those are all important elements to take into consideration. the focus also shifted from solving specific problems to addressing broader issues such as empowerment and agency. Next slide, please. Gender mainstreaming as a tool was introduced and integrated to assess gender issues across projects and policies. Gender mainstreaming became an important part of the development effort, with checklists, impact assessments, all becoming part of the practice. While the intentions were really good, the achievement of gender mainstreaming has been mixed. There has been some resistance to the practice, and it has been reduced to going from a set of complex issues to a set of simple lists that can be checked off as completed, as opposed to real commitment to real change, which, as we all know, can upset the social order and the hierarchy and is often not in the interest of those who hold power. Gender and development approach also includes men and masculinity. And it's really important for us to acknowledge the backlash to gender advocacy. As Himani was mentioning, if you think about there being only 100 jobs and men have 80 and women have 20, and we are talking about gender equality all of a sudden, there's a real fear that those 80 men with jobs may now lose, some of them at least, will lose their jobs. And so thus comes in the animosity towards gender equality. Even though you fundamentally know it's right, if it's going to hurt you, then why do you want to be part of it? So it's really important to understand this, to as we are thinking about policies, as we are hoping people get on board and this movement grows, to understand that these are real issues. Men feel, particularly in these times of economic insecurity, job losses, downsizing, they feel very vulnerable. And so while they might want gender equality, there's a price to be paid. And sometimes there's reluctance to pay that price. So helping understand that and also understanding how that might fuel gender violence. It's that insecurity that often leads to gender violence. So understanding all that is really, really important. So the gender-sensitive approach, particularly those embodied in the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, continues to be an important goal to accomplish in the next 15 years. However, we all know that challenges remain, not just in willingness and commitment of the governments and the existing social order, but also simply not all countries keep records, which makes measuring effectiveness very, very tough. So quickly, to summarize, we have seen an evolution since the 1970s, where women served the broader goal of economic growth and efficiency to one today of agency and empowerment. The original Women in Development model focused on how do we integrate women into the economy, thereby improving their status, to the new Gender and Development model that focuses on human rights, empowerment, agency, justice, and yes, also efficiency. The gender and development approach recognizes the shortcomings of the goal of gender equality, which assumes that men and women are homogeneous. We know that that's not true. Within men and within the subset of women, there are class differences, there are caste differences, multiple other differences. So we need to take that heterogeneity into account. It's also important that we understand the prevailing socioeconomic order and recognize that any progress that will threaten the prevailing social order will be thwarted by those who hold power. So what do? Overall, a broader commitment is necessary. Therefore, we need a broad framework to address gender equity issues. And what I propose is that we need to approach gender equity, next slide please, through actors, issues, and practices. So, what do I mean by when I say approach gender equity through actors, issues, and practices? Let's first talk about equality and equity. What do we mean by these two terms? Do they differ? And the answer is yes, they do differ, though the difference is subtle. And it's come about in the last decade or so, particularly as we learn more. Equality emphasizes sameness. It focuses on same opportunities, no discrimination, which should then lead to similar outcomes. So the focus of equality is on sameness and on access. Equity, on the other hand, is very similar to equality, but goes a little bit deeper. Equity acknowledges that because of structural and systemic sexism, racism, leveling the playing field is not merely about access to opportunities, but we have to go one level deeper. Are we truly removing all barriers and actively seeking participation by building an inclusive culture? And I know Himani talked about that inclusive culture. We may need special policies to address past and current injustices and offer additional support. We know we can't achieve equality by simply superficially leveling the playing field and assuming that if the person was behind, they can simply catch up because we have leveled the playing field. We must focus on what it is that the individual needs so they can compete effectively or participate fully. Not because they're not capable, but because they may lack networks and support at all levels. Next slide, please. We'll wait for the next slide. And oh, the slide before, please. Sorry. So let's go to the previous slide. Yes. So what do we mean by actors, issues, and practices? Okay. So when you approach an issue, and I'll give you examples, and it should become much clearer when we actually do an example. But actors, so we look at a particular issue and we have to figure out who are the players, who are the stakeholders, who are the constituents that will be impacted. It's really important when you use this framework to identify the actors. What are the issues? What are the problems we are trying to address? That becomes an important part. And then finally, the practices. What are the practices? What are the social norms? What's the culture of the place? What's the culture of the nation, the region, the village, the company that you're working at? What are existing policies? How are roles defined? So that we have a complete understanding of what is happening. Next slide, please. So once we understand the big picture and we have identified the actors, the issues, and the practices, then we can start seeing how they intersect, how they interact, how they influence one another. And once we understand this interaction and this interactive effect, then we can start addressing policy issues and the problems from its core. Next slide, please. So I'll give you an example. And this is actually the research I thought I would present to you, but then I changed my mind. So a decade ago, I started a research project with Dr. Kavita Chakravarti in Himachal Pradesh and Haryana. And some of you know Dr. Chakravarti. She and I wanted to evaluate the effectiveness of the 33% reservation for women in Panchayati Raj. So that was the question we wanted to begin with addressing. Some of the issues we wanted to tackle was Was there lack of active participation? So you'll see a list of issues. And so you can think about whatever problem you want to address and start your own list of issues, the actors and the practices, and then start looking at how they interact. So we wanted to see, do men and women make different policy do they have different policy preferences? We wanted to investigate the lack of women in leadership and governance. What's holding them back? What's causing them not to participate? Of course, we had our hypotheses. We knew some of the answers. But as a researcher, you don't want to go with your preconceived notions. You want to do a fair, honest research study where you keep your implicit bias away and you go and ask people these questions. What are the barriers? What is needed for active participation? So those were the issues we identified. The actors in our case were the sarpanchs. So the male and female elected sarpanchs in the village, they were important actors. The men and women in the panchayat, so the panches, were important actors for us. The BDOs, the block development officers, the panchayat secretaries, the junior engineer, they were important actors. State government officials, IS officers, and villagers were really important actors. These were the constituents. These were the stakeholders. Let's go to practices. This is the cultural norms. This is what we are facing in society. And these practices were very different in Himachal compared to Haryana. So you have to do it in each individual region separately. What's the social mobility? We noticed that the social mobility of women was limited in Haryana compared to Himachal Pradesh. Limited education for women. Most of the women, we did the study around 2010 before the laws were changed. So women had much lower education, years of education. There were travel constraints. They couldn't travel to the block development office on their own. There was parda. So they couldn't show their face and they're trying to run a village as a sarpanch. Family structures, the joint family structure, the domestic obligations women had impacted their work. Family and village expectations. Family expected them to do all the cooking, to serve the guests, to participate fully as they had done before. So what does it mean then? How do you take on this new role? Caste structure played a very important role. Where they were in social class, were they wealthy, were they working women that actually did agricultural labor? That made a difference. Gram Sabha meetings. Did the village even hold Gram Sabha meetings, or were they only held in name only? What about other meetings? What was the expectations? Were the husband as a proxy expected to attend these meetings? So this is just to give you an example of how do you frame a problem under this framework. And then you start assessing and coming up with making policy recommendations. So what we did was, once we identified all these issues, we then put together a survey. And we surveyed 980 sarpanchs from Himachal and Haryana, half men, half females. And it took 5 years to do this work because it was painstaking work. But because we went in depth and asked these deep questions, we were able to learn so much more and not just figure out, sort of validate what we already thought going in were the barriers. We actually found what are the real barriers in Himachal, in Haryana, how do they compare, and how can we make the situation better? Next slide, please. So I'll give you another quick example. So let's say you want to, and this is again something I just drew up based on the presentations yesterday and today, but just to give you an idea of how you can use this framework. So if you're looking at harassment in the workplace in a male-dominated industry, so so the example could be if you're looking at the construction industry, which is very male dominated, at least in the management part of it, or you can look at even an educational institution. So in the United States, there is a military institution called Virginia Military Institute, which until 1996 only admitted men as students. only men could come to school. And there was a lawsuit which then allowed women to come in. And in 1997, the first woman cadet entered VMI. In India, you have something similar. I just saw the movie Gunjan Saxena, so you know that when there is a certain structure set up or an industry is male-dominated or an institution, then it creates its own issues, okay? So what might those issues be? Well, they could be exclusion, there could be harassment and bullying, there could be no support in the organization, you might be expected to assimilate. You have to identify what are the barriers. Who are the actors? It's your colleagues, it's your classmates, it's your boss or it's your teacher, it's your human resource office, it's the mentor that you may have. The mentor might be in the organization, it might be outside the organization. The board of directors, they are an important ally and an important actor. What are the practices? Well, these male-dominated industries or institutions have set patterns of operation. In the case of VMI, 300 years of history of how they operated and excluded women. They had a machismo culture. It was I'm the man sort of culture. So for a woman to come in was tough. The 24/7 work culture may be tougher on women based on which country they are in. So I realize cultural differences are across the globe, but these are all things it's really, really important for us to identify. So what I've presented here to you is just a framework through which we can think about issues and problems, whether it's cyberbullying, whether it's harassment in a male-dominated industry, whether it's panchayati raj, whether it's corporate governance, but identify the actors, identify the issues, identify the practices, and then see how they interact, how they work together, and come up with the policy solutions and recommendations that can then address these concerns. So I'm going to stop in a minute here, and I want to leave you with one thing which was highlighted by several of our other speakers, which was that gender equity begins at home. And this is a Gandhi quote, if we can change ourselves, the tendencies of the world would also change. And I want to give you a practical example of that. I've written a short opinion article called Badi Badtameez Hai. And the reason I named it Badi Badtameez Hai, I grew up in India in the 1970s and was very opinionated and would share my opinion, wanted to do things differently. And every time I would say something, I would be told by others, "Aapki beti kitni badtameez hai." The whole idea being, become a people pleaser. Do not share your independent opinion. Go with the flow. Don't challenge the status quo. And I'm grateful that my mother stood up for me and said, no, my daughter has an opinion. And I know others shared the same thing, that they had mentors and they had people who championed them. It's really important, parents and teachers and mentors, that you encourage this generation to speak their mind, to stop being people pleasers, to challenge the status quo, because that's how change will happen, by one person at a time. With that, I again want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was a privilege to share this time with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for a very scholarly and enriching talk. It's really great experience, ma'am, to hear you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Having very enriching and knowledgeable discussion on a very important and current topic. All the delegates have very ably and clearly carried the discussion. Having had a thought-provoking ideas, participants must be eager to share questions and doubts. May I request Dr. Kiran Lamba to take queries and proceed with the question session. She is very sincere and dynamic faculty of Department of Economics in Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya. Dr. Kiran Lamba, please. Are you there?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Rajesh Hooda. Am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you are audible. Please continue.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor ma'am and Dr. Shibi Sharma ji for giving us an opportunity to be part of such elite gathering of scholars on a very relevant topic, cyber violence and gender equality. Here I am quoting Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and he said, I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved. So we cannot have a sustainable and happy world if half of its population is not given equal chance to grow, suppressed and exploited in any sense. So our speakers in this two-day webinar gave us a very wide and thought-provoking view of the issue. And in my view, no deliberation are complete without the feedbacks, observations, and queries of the participants. So now the house is open for the discussion. And here I am raising some queries which are posted by the participants. Our first question is by Mr. Rajiv Ranjan, and he is asking, is there any correlation between education and gender equality? If yes, then how? Because I have witnessed contrary in many parts of Jharkhand. Anyone from the house can answer the question. Now over to the speakers.
So this is Parina Lawrence, and let me answer that question. And as I mentioned, when you think about, everything intersects. So is there a correlation? The answer is yes, there is a correlation. As you would expect, there should be a correlation. More educated women, you would assume, would have more agency, and because of that, you would see higher gender equality. Now, in a simple world, that would be direct correlation, but we also know that there are other things that interact with this. Just providing a woman with education does not necessarily give her agency. She needs to be able to exercise that agency. I've had many, while growing up in the 70s, many people acquired education and they got married and they became housewives and they raised children, all noble things, but they really did not exercise the agency that their education provided them with. So I think that it's really important to understand that that can happen. Also, you may be very educated, but if society around you co-opts you, then it becomes very difficult for you to exercise that agency. I'll give you examples of sarpanchs in Haryana that we found who had decent education, not super highly educated, but were 10th class, 12th class educated, who could do the work, but their families would not allow them. And for them to stay married relatively happily, they had to toe the line. So yes, there is a correlation, there should be a correlation, but reality comes in and breaks that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Anyone else from the house can want to add any observation? So now I am moving to the next question. How can we sensitize people at workplace for gender equality? And I think this is for Himani, ma'am.
Thank you so much, for asking this question. And I'm glad that someone did ask this one. As I had mentioned, the entire sensitization on gender at workplace, is actually a cultural transformation. It's what we call as complete end-to-end change. And it just doesn't happen by one policy or one effort that we have. We need to look at it in a more holistic manner about, ensuring that we are, starting with awareness, making people believe that, there is a benefit in gender equality, and then also, getting them on board, making them, move on the journey with you rather than just deploying policies and, solutions. So it's about having, your organization move on the change journey with you rather than, just deploying policies.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. There is an observation by Miss Priyanka, and she is asking how to change the ground reality of inequality between son and daughter at home.
Maybe I can start with that. Sorry, go ahead, Farina, ma'am.
No, I was just going to say it's you have to do it very intentionally, because it's so easy to fall into habits that was instilled by your mother, your grandmothers, and culture around you. You have to set your intention. Just as you pray every morning, you meditate every morning, you set your intention every day that you will make sure that your daughter and son are treated equally. And do your very best in that. And some of the easy ones are, of course, education and all tuition and all that. But who does the housework? Who do you ask for help? When you're in the kitchen and you need something brought from the fridge, do you call your daughter out more? Maybe she's just more pleasant than your son is. But it's really important for you to stop that. Your son may be unpleasant, but he has to get ready for the new world he'll be stepping into, and get him ready. Boys have this mentality, and they're going to learn it from their classmates and others. You can't, that this is not man's work. Well, let's redefine man's work. Let's have these conversations with our children and their friends, and talk about whose responsibility is what, and how we share in these responsibilities, how the world is changing. Don't serve your husband, seriously. When my husband asks me for a glass of water, I'll bring it to him, sure, because he's thirsty. But then I come back and I make sure I ask him for a glass of water, because it's what you role model to your children. Because I have two sons. They are watching every single day how mom and dad interact. Is mom doing all the housework? So I'll stop there.
Yeah. I just want to add a couple of points. Yeah, I just want to add a couple of points here. First is, I think all of us are dealing with this, so inequality at home or inequality everywhere that we go is because of a lot of things. One, there are a lot of implicit biases. We are that generation, which is a generation of transition. Today, when I look at my daughter, the things that I feel, she will not feel guilty about them at all, because she is not seeing her mom being at home full time. So let's acknowledge the fact that we are a generation of transition, and we will go through this pain, but we have to go through this pain and make it happen for the future generations who will see a more equal, footing at home. But the other one also is, people who are looking at these inequalities are not doing it deliberately. There is a lot of implicit, unconscious bias that people are dealing with, and I think it will only change with time. So I would just say, just hang in there. It's only getting better every single day as we move ahead as a society.
I would like to add a point there, sorry. I guess parenting definitely has the bigger role to play, as rightly pointed out by Ms. Parina, Dr. Parina, because what happens here is, as long as parents are ready to give both the girl and the boy equal opportunity, whether it's like, okay, I just want to go and play outside. No, you're a girl, stay at home. No, okay, that's where you stop, Yes, you both have an opportunity. Have you finished your homework? Yes, both of you can go out. So it's where parents have to step in and say, we are both giving you the same opportunity. And if it starts there, then that's where I think you're just trying to abolish the inequalities that would begin with, or they would try to understand, no, we are all on the same playing level. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parina ma'am, Himani, and Tamanna ma'am. Our next and last question, because we are running out of time. How school curriculum can help in gender equality? What content we shall teach to upcoming generation? And this question is raised by Dr. Yogesh Chandra from BPSMB.
So let me take a shot at it, and my colleagues can join me. I would say it's really important to show some of the statistics that are shared in a social science class, right? We need to understand that this is the reality of the world we are facing in. But it's also important to
contextualize it. Because if you don't give proper context, people would say, well, girls aren't interested in XYZ, so they don't participate, right? They're not in engineering in the numbers they are in, say, healthcare or something, because intrinsically they are not engineers, or they can't fly a plane, or whatever that case might be. I think it's important that the teachers are prepared. So we need to train our teachers better. Are they treating women and men differently, girls and boys differently in the classroom? How they present this information? And this, all of this information is an opinion. These are facts. These are statistics, are facts. But how you present them, your opinion shows through. And you can then, sort of color the commentary and bring in your implicit bias. So it becomes very important to train the teachers to provide this information in the best way possible, and helping students understand that they have a role in making the world better. The whole idea is we all have agency. Yes, it's a small agency because we are one person in the 7 billion planet, but we all can make a difference one person at a time and own that agency.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I ask a small question? Can I intervene for a second?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Lawrence for giving us this wonderful recap and theoretically grounding the presentations in a very meaningful framework. You talked about GAD and how we shifted from WID to gender and development approaches. And then you, of course, with your such insightful research on women sarpanchas, because we have been seeing this, the lack of, action on the grassroots level. We call it the phenomena of sarpanch pati. But I was just wondering as to when you apply this framework in the present context, especially in the post-COVID, post-globalization period, when you are seeing this backlash to all the shall I say the feminist movement or other social justice movements around the world, you have in the framework of neoliberal authoritarian finance capitalism. So how would you imagine the kind of connections that we are able to make with a framework that of course is a very meaningful framework, and we must adhere to it when we analyze things on ground. For example, when we try to understand gender inequality in various contexts, be it our homes, the workplaces or other places. But look at the cyber world, what our children are getting exposed to. We don't know what is coming from there, and the connections cannot be known. And the surveillance mechanisms, because in child rights nowadays, they have this, monitoring discourse coming into picture. So in the, how do you monitor? How do you even intervene? So we may have these frameworks. So we were talking about academy, for example. We recently witnessed this list statement controversy in the wake of the Me Too movement. You saw that, the whole due process clauses and, whatever gains were made in the initial phase were questioned. And now you have the idea of shaming and, the whole new coming into picture. So how would you make sense of the pedagogical initiatives that one can take in the context of the academy? And secondly, because we are located
as a new technology emerges, as identity politics gains steam across the globe, right wing, whatever you want to call it, anti-feminist backlash, your practices are continuously changing. So within that context, how do we then navigate? And the answer is going to be different for a village in Haryana that's addressing Panchayati Raj issues. And the answer is going to be different in Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh for the same question based on what's happening in the local region. So I think what becomes really important is people like you and me who are grassroots researchers being attuned to local conditions and what's happening, not losing sight of the national policy because we want to do better nationally on the national front, but understanding that things are different and we must localize our practices and policy making so that it's functional and it works within the context you're working. So that's one solution, or one at least attempt. Others?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Anyone from the house? Okay, Rajesh, ma'am. Do we continue or we have to sum up? We have to sum up because already we are running out of time.
Sum up? Yeah, sure. If you could please do so.
Okay, thank you so much all the speakers for beautifully having the answer of the questions, and I am highly thankful to the organizing team for giving me this opportunity to be part of this session. Thank you so much, and over to Rajesh ma'am.
Thank you, Kiran ma'am, and thanks all the participants for your input and making the discussion live. Before I proceed, we are privileged to have very eminent and distinguished guests, and I take this opportunity to welcome and introduce all of them to you with very, very respectable and honorable Chancellor, Professor P.L. Chaturvedi ji. We also have in the meeting renowned and eminent physician and diabetologist, Dr. Jugal Kishore Sharma ji from New Delhi. Welcome, sir. Eminent social worker, Mr. Puneet Jungu from Rajasthan. Stalwart of commerce from RP, Professor R.P. Tulsian from Delhi University. Welcome, sir. Renowned academician, Professor Meera Mathur from MLS University, Udaipur. Welcome, ma'am. Eminent researcher and author, Dr. Saroj Devatwal from Rajasthan. Welcome you, ma'am. Academician of repute, Professor Sunil Gupta from IGNOU, New Delhi. Welcome you, sir. Engineer Abhinav Vasisht, stalwart mass communication, Dr. R.K. Rawatji, Dr. Vibha Bhoot, as a renowned personality of English literature, Senior Professor Krishna Avatar Goel, and with all of them, expert addressee of day one of the international webinar, Dr. Ankita Sharma, Dr. Deena L. Mehndi, and Dr. Dheeraj Goya are with us. I welcome all of you, sir. Hearty welcome. Continuing with the session, I feel delighted to welcome our chief guest, Professor Vinay Kumar Mehra ji, on day 2 of this international webinar. Respectable Madam, we are grateful to you that you tenderly accepted to be with us despite extremely busy schedule. Welcome you, ma'am. I would like to share her vast experience, achievements, and contributions she has made in academic and administrative fronts. Currently, Professor Vinay Kapoor Mehra ji is the Vice Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar National Law University, Sonipat. Formerly, she was the Commissioner in State Information Commission, Punjab. She also headed as the Head Law Department, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. She has various papers published in national and international journals of repute. She has also authored a book on Perspective on Indian Personal Laws, Status of Women, Asia Law House, Hyderabad in 2013. She has also been a member of various academic and administrative bodies. Madam has been frequently invited resource person to deliver lectures. Her dynamism, knowledge on diverse issues, and contributions was well acknowledged and honored by several national and international bodies. Ma'am, you are a very prestigious speaker, and as a chief guest on behalf of our organizing committee from BPS fraternity and from CBS, Dr. CBS Cyber Security LLB, I welcome you once again. Welcome, ma'am. I invite you for your special address, please. Ma'am, are you there? Ma'am, please unmute yourself. Shiti sir.
Yes, ma'am, she's there.
Vinay ma'am. Vinay ma'am, could you hear me? Shalini ma'am, may I request you to call her once?
She has re-entered. Welcome, Professor Vinay Kapoor Mehra, ma'am.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you.
Welcome you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rajesh. First of all, let me congratulate the whole team for organizing such a nice international webinar, and the credit goes to your leader, Professor Sushma Yadav, Vice Chancellor, BPS University. So I hope she is here. Yes. Can I know what is the time allotted to me?
Ma'am, you are the honorable chief guest of today. Time depends upon you, ma'am. We are looking forward for your address, ma'am.
Already we are too late. That's why I'm asking this thing.
Ma'am, we are sitting at the comfort of our home, ma'am. Not an issue. Please carry on.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So in this 2 days international webinar, there has been a lot of discussion on the types of cyber crimes and gender equality. So during this COVID-19, we know that most of the people who are not even know how to start the this gadgets, they are using it day and night, and sometimes we also want to do some adventure and just share our information with others. This causes a great trouble. As we know that women are most target of cyber crimes, the reason being they are not well aware about the technology, how to using these gadgets. So they becomes the soft target of all these crimes. And we know in this digital world, every time from morning till evening, we are with the digital world. So every aspect, whether it's shopping, whether it's teaching, we have to be with the cyberspace. Now, as we know that India is among few countries who have enacted the law, that is IT 2000, but that widely covers the financial and commercial crimes. Very few sections are connected with the cyber crimes relating with the women. So we have to combine with other legislations, namely Indian Penal Code or Indecent Represent Act, and recently even Immoral Trafficking Act was also combined to punish a person. So most of the crimes goes unreported because of the shyness of women folk, because they don't want to face the stigma, and also due to the lengthy process of the courts and other things, due to the ignorance to properly handling the technology. So as well said by Mr. Sharma that prevention is better than cure. So the women or the girls should be very preventive while using these gadgets, mainly when they are using this WhatsApp and chatting and Skype. They should not share their personal information, and they should be very, very careful while adding any stranger in their friends list. And if any event happens, they must raise their voice against the culprits, because today it is quite possible that it's only one incident which is uh, committed by the culprit, but if he goes unpunished, in future he can commit the same crimes against most of the women. So what is more required is that the women has to be bold. They must come forward. So whether it's a question of crime or whether it's a question of disparity at the workplace or at any other institution, the thing is we have to cross the barriers. There may be so many laws, as rightly said by one of the speaker, there are various policies, laws, but if we are not strong, we are not converting those hurdles into opportunities, we cannot come forward. So whatever barriers are in our own mind, we must firstly cross those barriers. It's true that some little support is required, the women in the family, for the women to come forward, but the thing is there should be a strong will and determination in their inner self, which really help in the long race. I want to share some of my experiences journey towards the vice chancellorship. That at my family nobody wanted me to do law, because at that time it was considered that this profession is not for women. But I had made my mind, and I was strong enough to convince my parents that I don't want to do any other stream. I only want law. So I think this confidence has to be developed, and this is developed by the parents, by the teachers, by the our community, and you can say there can be some role models before us. So at every step, at every stage, there is a psyche. It's not only that men are creating hurdles, there can be your women colleagues also who may be creating hurdles in a way. So we have to be strong in ourselves, and that is there. And you know, from family, the first supports come. If family does not support, the women cannot achieve equality. They cannot come out. They cannot do the wonders what they are doing. So there has been little support, maybe at the end of the mother or at the end of the father or big brother. And a little push can do wonders. So we were discussing the story of that our Air Force. What is that? I forget the names. So there was a support of the father with which she could achieve her dreams. So firstly, every woman has a right to have big dreams. No one can stop. And firstly, we must have dreams, and then we must put our best. We have to do time management. Most of the women who are at the top, they are married and they have to manage their time between the family and the career. It's quite possible that we may achieve the goal somewhat late as compared to the male, but if that dream is not letting us to stop, we can achieve our goal and we can be there at the place where we want to be from our childhood, where we have been thinking that I want to be so and why I want to be so. And when we are women, we are mothers, we must practice all those norms that we should not discriminate between boy and the girl. We must assign equal roles, and then gradually we can change the whole scenario. It may take time, but we know that evolution is very slow, but it lasts for a longer period. If it is revolution, it can be reverted by another revolution. So change always comes, and we have seen our mothers, our grandmothers, they were confined to homes. We come forward because there was some support, there were such policies, there were such laws, and moreover, some God gifted strong determination. So, with these words, I want to conclude for today. Thank you, everyone, for giving me this time to share my views. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the kind and motivational address. Indeed, it is an insightful and thought-provoking address. Many, many thanks, ma'am. Honorable Chief Guest of yesterday, Professor P.L. Chaturvedi-ji, Chancellor, Central University, and Chief Guest of today, Professor Vinay Kapoor Mehra-ji, respectable guests, eminent delegates, and participants. I understand that we are eagerly waiting our Chief Patron, Professor Sushma Yadavaji, for her presidential address. She was with us yesterday, and today too she wanted to join us, but I think she might have been very, very busy that she could not join us, but she has conveyed her blessings and wishes for all of us, and we feel indebted to her. Her blessings and wishes means a lot for all of us. With the permission of the dignitaries and the chief guest, may I proceed, ma'am? Before I proceed for the formal vote of thanks and invite Dr. Shalini, I would like to share a brief profile of our Honorable Vice Chancellor as the Chief Patron and Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya. It is a matter of great pleasure and proud to welcome and introduce her, even in her absence, to all of you. Madam Sushma Yadavji is presently the Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya, and she is a great academician, researcher, eminent and renowned speaker. We feel faculty and fraternity feel proud and advantaged, and university has won 2 global awards for being the best upcoming university and the best university in social community engagement and impact. Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya is a partner in Unnat Bharat Abhiyan and continuously heading towards excellence in imparting education and research activities. Less I said about her achievements. May I take an intervention? Madam Vice Chancellor is calling me. Shiti sir, kindly ensure, I think Madam
All right, ma'am. Ma'am, if there's no invite,
May I call her, sir? May I call her, sir? Taking
sure.
an intervention?
Sure, ma'am.
Thank
Sure,
you,
ma'am.
sir.
Please, please. Dear participants, by the time the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sushma Yadava ma'am, joins us, till that time we can take a couple of more question answers. I would like to request Yogesh sir to kindly take up question answer session. For 2-3 questions more. And first of all, I would like to request Professor R.P. Tulsian sir from University.
Sir, I am happy to share with you that Honorable Vice Chancellor is just free and she is likely to join soon.
Till the time we can have two more questions. First of all, I would like to request Professor Alpi Tulsian, who has been waiting since long, to ask a question. Professor Alpi Tulsian, sir, go ahead.
Everybody is preserving competence from my side. मैं बोलूंगा कि इंटरनेशनल वेबिनार में डॉक्टर शर्मा जी आपने कमाल कर दिया है और ये रियली यहाँ जेंडर इनइक्वालिटी बिल्कुल है. मैं देख रहा हूँ. They have done wonders. Himani, are you listening me? Parina, Tamanna, you have done exceedingly well. मैच जीत गए आप. I can say no reservation is required. Rather, I tell you, Corona, I can tell you, the male genders, they have become more independent by doing household work. They have learned a lot. They have learned a lot and they have become little bit independent. So you should congratulate your male counterparts. They have learned a lot from the ladies in home. So this is a warning to you. They may enter your arena. You've been having all monopoly. And more importantly, Dr. Sharma has very well created a fear in the minds of those who are potential trouble creator by telling lot about the offenses, punishment under IT Act and IPC. Dr. Sharma, I'm sure those who are listening you, they will definitely tell others that by the मुश्किल है काम create करना, violence करना. And moreover, our Tamanna ji, you have talked about women directorship, independent women directorship, NSC created companies. I am happy that in India, NSC has taken forward this battery and more are coming. Let us not criticize. They are less. Let us appreciate them. They are opening the window for women. And I'm with you. I agree with you that wherever in board meeting women are entering, the atmosphere is very collegial and they are doing betterment for the company. People are serious and male present themselves more responsibly. I agree with you. And Himani, you are told that there are 4 benefits certainly in informed mothers and independent children, no doubt about it. And if people from Rajasthan may allow to go Singapore and other places, you can understand that all males are not bad. But I may make a small advice to you people so that you convey to the other ladies that charity begins at home. Our mothers are good, but mother-in-laws are not good. My mother-in-law is good. My daughter's mother-in-law is not good. So tell those mother-in-law, I have no complaint against my mother-in-law, but you understand. So you convey them that they should treat the lady who joins their house very well. Let males की कोई हिम्मत नहीं है उसको कुछ कह सके. With these words, I congratulate you all our lady guest speakers that they've done exceedingly well, and you have warned the male persons that they will come well prepared next time whenever they come to the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Tulsian sir, for your observation. I would like to request participants, if they have any more questions, they can ask the expert addressees.
Dr. Kshitij, I have a question related to salary disparity, especially in field of sports, because I have
Yogesh
seen...
Yogesh sir, just a moment, Yogesh sir. Let me just introduce you. I've met so many people in my life, but he's one of the most sincere one. Yogesh sir is a faculty of education at BPSMV and a very sincere faculty member. Now, sir, I would like to request you to kindly ask a question.
Shall I continue?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Kshitij. My question was related to salary disparity in sports. Do we have a provision in our penal code or whether constitution provide that such disparity can be minimized? Like in case of cricket, one player receive 7 crore for a tender or a salary, and similarly in women counterpart receive 7 lakh for a match. What is how we can minimize such disparities in our society?
Well,
anyone
I
can
guess,
answer from panel.
I think here the role of the regulator comes into play a lot. I mean, because if you don't have the Minister of Sports come into the picture here and say, let's just get the equality, gender equality here in terms of how men are pitted against women for playing the same sport. I mean, it would be quite, unfair. And it is happening. We are all aware of that. And you rightly pointed out that it is happening. But, we need to open their eyes in a more rightful manner, because it kind of just does not have, I mean, there are initiatives that get taken and the government takes it up beautifully and even addresses it beautifully. So I guess women players should be able to put it up along with their coaches and how they are maintained, by their sports association. And these are the people, or these are the bodies that need to approach the government to make sure that this is that the salary parity is achieved. So it's something that unfortunately should not be going bottom up. It should be going top down, because you have to have equality being understood from the government level and not from the bottom level. But this is where I guess India is very good at, because when it comes to media, the coverage is extremely good. I mean, I'm sure that if this is even put up by towards the media does do a considerable job of reaching out there and making sure that it gets heard. So I guess there are a lot of factors here at play, and I can only hope that, as I said, it's the government that comes down and then realizes this. But if not, then the players have to step up and speak up. And unfortunately, they don't speak up because again there is a fear that if they found a place to play in the national teams or international teams, they might not get the place just because they spoke up. So it has to be a more unified approach rather than an individual going and speaking. So it should be one voice. So you have to have a more of a family that goes to speak rather than just an individual. That's from my end.
Thank you so much, Tamanna ma'am. Herein, I would like to acknowledge the presence of applied economics stalwart, Professor V.K. Gangal sir. He is head of the department at the Albag Educational Institute. We welcome you as well. Now, Honorable Chief Patron, Professor Sushma Yadava ma'am has joined us. Now, I've hand over the coordination part to Dr. Rajesh Huda ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Ma'am, I very cordially and with due reverence, on behalf of all the delegates, participants, and our chief guest, welcome you, ma'am. We were just eagerly and for a long time very eagerly waiting you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, that despite being very, very busy, you took time to join us. Ma'am, I heartily extend again welcome and thanks to you and invite you for your presence. Dear participants, let us chat about her achievements and contributions and more rest to her credit. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajesh, and all dear, very, very dear participants of the webinar rather. I join you. I never knew you will be continuing, and that you are continuing till 9 o'clock, I think is a great compliment towards the success of seminar, and it is the testimony that this seminar has been completely successful, popular, and very, very enlightening for the entire gamut of intellectuals who had joined it. My dear colleague and Honorable Vice Chancellor, National Law University, Sonipat, Professor Vinay Kapoor Mehra ji, the man who made us meet here and who is the patron of this webinar, Dr. C.B. Sharma ji, a very upright police officer and a great social, now I can say social servant. So social servant is not a word which is used very commonly. Public servant we say, social servant we don't say, although I think that's much more required and much more relevant. So Dr. Sharma ji, my own team, director of the seminar, Professor Ipshita Bansal, Dean Academic Affairs and Dean Faculty of Laws, Engineer Swati Vashisht, Cyber Security Analyst and Secretary of the webinar. Today's esteemed panelist, I have not been able to listen to you. I'm sorry for that. But Dr. Tamanna Dalwai, if I can see you, I think, yeah, wonderful seeing you here. Ms. Himanshu Maharshi from Singapore, I hope she's there. And Dr. Prerna Lawrence, United States of America, she joined us yesterday also. And my very able team, I can see Tulsian Saab also in front of me. He's a senior colleague for us from Delhi University, and he's joined this webinar for the taste of it and for his liking of the seminar, in fact. And our own team, Dr. Ritu Bajaj, Registrar of the University, Dr. Daisy, BPS Institute of Higher Learning, and Dr. Yogesh Chandar, Dr. Suman Kahar, Dr. Kiran Lamba, Dr. Ashok Kumar, Dr. Anu Bala, and the coordinators of the 2 days, Dr. Shalini Atri yesterday and Dr. Rajesh Huda today. I would once again compliment the Dr. CBS Cyber Security Services India.
Sharmaji, very few people would be able to realize their dreams in this life and so quick, but you've done it. And I'm sure it must be your experience of police officer which made you venture into this field. This is an upcoming field of security. And I'm so happy that you really took up this cause for the sake of society. I am thankful to all the eminent speakers who've spoken and given various dimensions. I'm sure you must have been so interesting and so full of information, analysis, and rootways that the webinar is still continuing. You must have answered questions which are there in the minds of all of us and much more in the generation which is venturing into it. And it's not the new generation, it's generation like us who do not know ABC of technology but have to work with it. Now our office has to work. And let me share with you, I don't know whether my colleagues know it or not. 2 days before, somebody hacked my official mail and wrote mails to all colleagues around, I need something very urgently from you, which happens usually. Thankfully, instead of helping, they sent this to me. And I told them that this is not my mail, but that shows how urgent is the requirement and how serious is the problem. It's a violation and it's a violence, you know. Both things come together, and all violations lead to violence, result in violence, and violence results into a stopping of one's initiatives, one's potential, one's capability turning into capacities, because then one fears venturing into those areas. So if cyberspace is uncertain, I would think twice before, going into it and working in it. And that is the purpose of those who violate our privacy, who violate our space, and that's why it becomes very important. So I think this is the most opportune time when teachers have to venture into cyberspace, wittingly, unwittingly, whether they like it or they don't like it, but online classes are our fate and we have to take them. Online meetings are our compulsion and we have to do it. Therefore, this webinar becomes very topical, very appropriate. And I'm sure you have made our faculty colleagues, our students, our participants of the webinar much more aware and much more capable of finding violations in the cyberspace and finding those arenas where they are vulnerable and how to stop those vulnerabilities or how to tackle those vulnerabilities. I said yesterday, violence always aims at stopping you, deterring you from realizing your potential. We are emotional people, the women, as people understand them, but we can be as tough as technology. We have to tell the world. And this is the time to tell the world that we don't fail in technology or science or something which is emotionless. Although emotions never leave you and human beings should not be without emotions. But I think when we tackle technology, let's understand technology as it is. It has brain without emotions. And so the violators are the same people. They do not have good feelings. They do not have fine emotions. They are violators and perpetrators who use technology to their ends. I'm sure by this webinar now we know which are the fields we have to be careful, how we have to tackle, and how we have to move on. Thank you very much, all the eminent speakers today. You are intellectuals in your own right. You have views to share and you have information to again share with your friends and fraternity around. So it's not easy to share one's knowledge, but you shared it through presentations, through your sharing of ideas also, and you've answered questions. So bringing us all, my own faculty colleagues, and the entire team of CBS Cybersecurity Services. A big thank you from my side and from the side of my university. We say in India, we are heartily grateful. We are in fact grateful for this webinar coming into a reality. It was on my demand that Sharmaji took it up and contacted all of you. And we got a plate, which is prepared with very, very nutritional dishes in terms of your presentations. I know it's dinner time for everyone, especially in India. It's late dinner already. You have had food for thought. You have had food for mind. I'm sure you're ready for food for body as well, which is required. Therefore, I'll share my ideas some other time, but I'll say violence must go. And let's begin from the cyberspace where it is easy without much violence on the perpetrators, but we must do that. And Sharmaji must give us the way, and all of us must share those ways which we are searching for ourselves. Once again, a big thank from the university. I join you in sharing these inputs and insights which come out, and I hope and wish that the world becomes again more secure and welcoming place in cyber also for women, the fairer sex, the more beautiful creation of God, if I say so, and the most essential creation for nurturing the society and nurturing the nation. Thanks once again. And I'm really grateful to all of you for waiting so much and for carrying it on. Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Namaskar. Sabko namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for a very
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
I'm Ipshita. It was real pleasure and honor for us that you could join us at last.
Thank you. I think it was your desire which brought me here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
May I request all? Thank you so much, ma'am, for a very inspirational and insightful address. You are the true reflection of an academic and intellectual excellence. Ma'am, we had your wishes, and that means a lot, your wishes and blessing, ma'ams. But still, it would have been a great miss hadn't you joined us. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, may I request now our colleague, Dr. Shalini, for a formal vote of thanks, because before winding up the academic treat and deliberations, we must acknowledge the contribution, support, and strength of the program. Dr. Shalini.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajesh Huda. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Good evening and my namaskar to all. It has been quite fascinating and engaging 2 days in this international webinar on cyber violence and gender equality. Please bear with me for 5 minutes because it's not just the coordinators, but there are many people behind this event who have put this conference together. And I would like to thank them all on behalf of my university and on behalf of Cyber Security Services LLP. So Honorable Professor P.L. Chaturvedi ji, Chancellor, Central University, Haryana. Honorable Chief Guest of the Day, Professor Vinay Kapoor Mehra ji, Vice Chancellor, B.R. Ambedkar National Law University, Sonipat. Honorable Vice Chancellor Ma'am, Professor Sushma Yadav ji, Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya. Chairman and Patron, respected Dr. C.B. Sharma ji, distinguished speakers, Dean Laws, Professor Ipshita Bansal, Registrar Dr. Ritu Bajaj, ma'am, my co-coordinator Dr. Rajesh Huda, Organizing Committee, Dr. Yogesh, Dr. Kiran, Dr. Anu, Dr. Ashok, Dr. Suman Kuhar, colleagues, Secretary Swati Vashisht ji, and technical team, Dr. Cyber Security Services LLP, and my dear participants. Gratitude is exalted as one of the most important virtues, or I would say dharma, in India, a country with a heritage and culture, where guest is placed at highest pedestal as a mark of reverence. So I take this opportunity to thank you all. I extend my heartfelt thanks to our honorable chief guest, Professor Vinay Kapoorji, Vice Chancellor B.R. Ambedkar National Law University, Sonipat, for giving her kind consent and accepting the invitation to be the chief guest of this webinar. Thank you, ma'am, for your special address and gracing the occasion. It goes without saying that our Honorable Vice Chancellor, ma'am, Professor Sushma Yadav ji, the chief patron of this international webinar, is herself a woman of substance. A great leader is visionary, one who radiates hope, passion, and energy, and passes those passion on to people. Ma'am, we always find you in all these positive radiations. You pass these radiations, positive radiations to all of us. And we are very indebted to you for your unconditional support and blessings always. I know it has been quite hectic for you from last few days, maybe months. In fact, this pandemic has made your life more busier. So I would say that you are not only a great Vice Chancellor, but a great human being, a perfectionist to the core, and a great guide. Thank you, ma'am. I extend my deep gratitude to respected Dr. C.B. Sharma ji, chairperson and patron, for putting in great efforts, collaborating, organizing this webinar, which is the need of the hour. Sir, you have been exceptionally helpful. I acknowledge your complete support, contribution, and must say that you're quite enthusiastic for such debatable issues. In fact, my interaction with Sharma sir made me realize how meticulous he is and very thorough regarding his work. I would also thank you, sir, for your deliberations today as a distinguished speaker on understanding cyber violence, challenges, and legal responses. I offer my sincere thanks to Professor Ipshita Bansal as webinar director and also as advisor of this event of academic importance. Ma'am herself works for gender equality and she has done a lot of work for women empowerment. I express my gratefulness to Dr. Ritu Bajaj, Registrar of our university, and Dr. Daisy, BPS IHL, for their advisories, suggestions, and their support in this webinar. My big thank you to our panelists from India and abroad, Dr. Tamanna Dalwai for her succinct discussion on gender equality and corporate governance, Dr. Himani Maharishi for her wonderful presentation on gender equality and inclusion at workplace, and Professor Parina Lawrence for her informative talk on approaching gender equity through actors, issue, and practices. Many ideas grow better when transplanted into other mind than the one where they sprang up from. So you all have given these ideas. Thank you so much for your contribution, for your time, for wonderful sessions. Thanks to all the speakers and dignitaries of yesterday's event also, Dr. Ankita, Dr. Deena, Dr. Dheeraj. I express my gratefulness to my co-coordinator, Dr. Rajesh Huda, for organizing such academic event of importance, untiring effort, perseverance, and commitment. I must say she is always enthusiastic and a great support as a colleague, and she is a very great friend of mine. My heartfelt thanks. The organizing Dr. Yogesh Chandra, Dr. Kiran Lamba for taking up question sessions, which is a very exceptionally difficult task, I would say. My thanks to Dr. Suman Kohar, Dr. Ashok, and Dr. Anu. They all were a great support, and as it is often said, any event is successful by a good team. It was great working with them. It is a long history of humankind that those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively has prevailed. So everything is a teamwork. My special thanks to webinar secretary Swati Vashishta for her great organization. I also thank technical team of Dr. CBS Cyber Security Services LLP for their untiring services and working day in and out for this webinar. I thank Sachin Sharma, Vishant Ojha, Mudit Chaturvedi, Ramesh Verma, Satyendra Singh, and Balkrishna Bhardwaj, joint secretaries and deputy secretaries. My sincere thanks to Mr. Varaji and his team for his great assistance always, and also thanks to the office staff of Vice Chancellor ma'am. I deeply express my thanks and remain grateful to the learned and informed audience. I think they deserve a huge round of applause as they are our pillars, making this event strong. And my sincere thanks to Dr. Kshitij Maharishi. He has been a facilitator who actually took the pains. And I must say that Dr. Kshitij's zeal has no end. It was nice to work with a very organized and disciplined person. My thanks to all the dignitaries present here today and yesterday. If I have missed anyone, I take an excuse from all of you. My heartfelt thanks to all whomsoever has been a part of this event. Thank you all. Over to you, Dr. Rajesh Huda.
Thank you, Dr. Shalini. In the end of the webinar, I wish a continuous association and more such deliberations. Many thanks to all for sparing and staying with us for so long, and a very hearty bow to Honorable Vice Chancellor that she joined us being very much tired. Thank you so much, ma'am. Wishing you all good luck, good health. I take leave with Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Jai Hind, ma'am. Jai Hind, sir.
जय हिंद जय भारत. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सबका.
जय हिंद जय भारत.
Thank you.
भारत. नमस्कार सभी को. नमस्कार.
आज के लिए नमस्ते कर रहे हैं, फिर मिलेंगे पर तो जारी रहेगा. जी.